Chapter 28:61. The path of the abyss behind him sank back into the water. The person who controlled the Tao Abyss's invitation could control the path of the abyss. He could use his will to decide whether others could step on it. Seeing this, the peerless figures and living beings did not have a place to land, so they hurriedly flew up again. They were all shocked. "Lord of Nirvana, what are you doing?" The demon emperor's heart skipped a beat. He knew that the Lord of Nirvana was up to no good. He must have a reason for snatching the invitation. The Lord of Nirvana stood on the path of the abyss and looked up at the many powerful figures and living beings who had nowhere to go. He said without shame, "Amitabha, Buddha will help those who are fated, but you are not fated with Buddha. I cannot help you all." Rumble, the sacred mountain, seemed to have discovered the internal strife in the abyss and became excited. Countless life-extinguishing lightning rumbled and sped up. The living beings in the abyss were shocked and furious. The sky-cracking patriarch roared, "What are you trying to do?" The Lord of Nirvana was trying to kill them all, but facing the anger of the living beings, he said calmly, "I said that I will only help those who are fated, and those who are fated are my believers." Believers? Everyone immediately understood the Lord of Nirvana's intentions. He was threatening everyone to become believers of the Lord of Nirvana. But was it that easy to become a believer of the Lord of Nirvana? Didn't they see that all of his believers were trapped in the cavern world and used by him? Plus, what right did they have to believe in the Lord of Nirvana? They hated his despicable methods, so how could they respect him from the bottom of their hearts? This was simply too much. Some of the weak-willed living beings immediately surrendered and said, "Lord of Nirvana, I am willing to become your believer. Let me in." The Lord of Nirvana was indifferent. He said, "You are covered in the evil of the world and your hearts are impure. You are not worthy of becoming my believers." "Then what do you want?" they asked anxiously. The Lord of Nirvana said calmly, "It's simple. Wipe away your own memories and only keep your consciousness." He stood on the path of the abyss and controlled the life and death of the living beings. What? Wipe away their own memories? Wouldn't that make them walking corpses with no memories? They were even worse than those imprisoned believers. At the very least, those believers still had their own consciousness. But whatever they had, they were just puppets. Whatever the Lord of Nirvana told them, that was what they were. What was the difference between this and death? "Lord of Nirvana, don't go too far." Many living beings roared in anger. He hated the Lord of Nirvana's despicable actions to the bone. Before this, there were still people who were bewitched by his appearance and had a good impression and trust of him. But now, he hated them to the bone. Its true nature was also completely exposed. The Lord of Nirvana was calm, as usual. "If you are not willing to turn over a new leaf, I will not stop you. Unfortunately, I cannot help you." As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly turned around and strode towards the Hall of Absolute Beginning. With every step he took, the path of the abyss behind him would sink. When they saw the Nirvana Lord leave by himself, there was no one who wasn't enraged, no one who wasn't filled with hatred. "Lord of Nirvana, if there's a next life, I'll make sure you won't be able to eat or sleep in peace, even if I become a ghost." On the cliff, the hatred of the common people soared to the heavens. The hatred was so strong that it pierced through the ages. Perhaps, apart from the Emperor of the Holy Mountain, no one could be hated to such an extent. The Lord of Nirvana's expression was indifferent, not caring about their lives at all. With a face full of compassion, he said, "Sai, the Buddha is merciful, but the fools of the world do not listen to advice and refuse to repent." He was laughing coldly in his heart. If there was anyone to blame, blame it on Su Yu. He had stolen more than half of his followers, so he could only use this method to enslave all the living beings of the inner abyss into followers. The common people were filled with grief and indignation. They wished they could skin him alive and eat his flesh. But even so, the hatred in their hearts could not be alleviated. Rumble, at this moment, the Holy Mountain had finally activated the thunder of destruction. 500 bolts of lightning descended from the sky like flames, enveloping the entire inner abyss. Countless living beings were filled with despair. Their faces were filled with hatred that they had never felt in their lives. But at this moment, a long laugh reverberated throughout the inner abyss. Lord of Nirvana, if you don't help the common people, I will. Suyu leaped into the abyss, at the same time taking out the item he had kept with him for hundreds of years. It was something that no one knew about. The Tao Abyss Invitation. The Tao Abyss Invitation from the Blood Lotus Demon Path. Apart from Xiao Dai, no one else knew about this invitation. Even Yun Yazi did not know about it. Even the Lord of Nirvana knew nothing about it. Crash! The Tao Abyss Invitation fell into the abyss, immediately leading to the second path of the abyss. It led straight to the Taichu Palace. In their grief and indignation, the peerless powerful beings and the common people were ecstatic. There was something that could only be cherished if it was lost. Suyu had previously given them the right to enter the path of the abyss, and they had at most thanked him for being a good person. But at this moment, they had been saved from the brink of death. Their hearts were surging with gratitude and respect that came from life. This kind of respect naturally turned into faith. The common people were in danger. The Lord of Nirvana had abandoned them. But Suyu, who had the sacred body of the human clan, had saved them. If he was not worthy of faith, who else in this world was worthy of such faith? Endless power of faith gathered in Suyu's body. Suyu shouted, "All living beings, follow me into the abyss." The peerless powerful beings cheered excitedly, and the common people laughed as they jumped off the cliff one after another. All of them landed on the path of the abyss. When the last group of living beings had just jumped off, the thunder of annihilation poured down. The formation of the inner abyss melted like a piece of paper. Everything on the inner abyss was instantly destroyed into nothingness, leaving nothing behind. Even the ancient earth was melted 100 feet thick. Everything in the past was erased. All living beings looked back at the horrifying scene of destruction. Chills ran down their spines, and they were filled with lingering fear. If they had been any later, they would all have been buried here. But besides the lingering fear, their hearts were filled with monstrous resentment. Lord of Nirvana, the demon emperor took the lead, his demonic energy shocking the heavens. His facial features turned into those of a hideous demon, and he looked extremely terrifying. The heaven-splitting ancestor roared furiously. "Where do you think you're going?" For the first time, he threw off the chains that bound him and chased after Suyu with a roar. Yin Yazi's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Lord of Nirvana is a scourge of nothingness. He must not be allowed to live. Countless bookshelves surrounded him, and he turned into lightning as he chased after Suyu. Many of the peerless powerful beings were also filled with hatred as they chased after him. Even the common people rushed forward without a care for their own safety. They only had one thought: kill the Lord of Nirvana. If he did not die, the will of the common people would not be appeased, and their hatred would not be extinguished. Kill the Lord of Nirvana. Kill, 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 kill. The will of the common people of nothingness was unprecedentedly united at this moment. That was Chapter 2862. Nirvana Lord had already walked more than half of the path of the abyss. Suddenly, he heard the sounds of killing behind him. He turned to look. His calm face was now filled with shock. The second path of the abyss? Impossible. In the void, the only known Tao Abyss invitation letter was the one in her hand. Why was there a second one? But now was not the time to be shocked. Chief Protector hurriedly said, "Nirvana Lord, run." His body was covered in cold sweat, and his face was pale. Just now, Nirvana Lord had offended all living beings in the void. As a result, they all swore that even if they were to become vengeful spirits in their next lives, they would not let Nirvana Lord off. Now that they had escaped, they would definitely eat Nirvana Lord alive. Nirvana Lord shuddered. Things had developed in an unexpected way. Deep regret reverberated in his heart. But regret was useless. The peerless experts and common people were rushing over at top speed. Run! Nirvana Lord did not dare to move forward leisurely. He hurriedly led the Nirvana warship towards Taichu Temple. As long as he took the leaf inside, he would be able to cross the abyss. He would successfully enter the 9-star civilization. Kill, led by the Demon Emperor and the others. The living beings began to chase after the Lord of Nirvana. As long as Nirvana Lord was not killed, he would not stop. Maybe it was because of the unity of all living beings that their consciousness merged into one and formed a powerful pressure. Just like how Nirvana Lord used his believers' pressure to suppress all the Almighties. At this moment, the pressure they formed also formed a huge pressure on Nirvana Lord. Nirvana Lord, who had instinctively reached Taichu Temple, immediately slowed down. In an instant, Demon Lord and the others closed the distance between them. Hearing the demonic roar, Nirvana Lord took out his remaining cavern world and released the faith within. Two diametrically opposed beliefs collided violently. One wanted to kill Nirvana Lord. The other wanted to protect Nirvana Lord. After a moment of stalemate, the faith of all living beings won. With an overwhelming advantage, they completely crushed the Lord of Nirvana's faith. Then, they suppressed Nirvana Lord's movement. Seeing Demon Lord and the others getting closer and closer, Nirvana Lord broke out in cold sweat. He had never felt so anxious before. Wait a moment, we could talk things out, the Nirvana Lord said. The Demon Emperor sneered. Go to hell and say that. Weren't you acting all high and mighty and despicable just now? Acting as if I can decide your life and death? Only now do you remember to talk nicely? Get lost. Patriarch Sky-Splitting's hatred sword. Holding the chain in his hand, he threw it at the Lord of Nirvana. At this moment, the Lord of Nirvana's faith was suppressed, and he had lost more than half of his strength. After all, he cultivated the path of faith. The most important aspect of strength was faith. The loss of faith would result in a great loss of strength. They couldn't withstand a vicious blow from the exposed, heaven-shattering Patriarch. Just as the Nirvana Lord was about to receive the attack, suddenly, a shocking splash exploded from the abyss. The splashing water shattered heaven-splitting Patriarch's chains into 8 pieces. One of the water droplets struck heaven-splitting Patriarch, causing his body to collapse and his soul to be on the verge of dispersing. Fortunately, Suyu reacted quickly. In the instant that his soul collapsed, he made his move, reversing the flow of time. In the nick of time, Patriarch Heaven Splitter was saved. However, everyone was startled by the shocking splash. A single remaining drop of water had almost wiped out one of the strongest Almighties among them. Who was the one who caused the splash? Gurgle. Right at this moment, a series of bubbles emerged from the center of the 2 paths into the abyss. More and more bubbles appeared, and they became denser and denser. Everyone's heart sank. Could it be an abyssal monster? Or could it be the worst of them all? Suyu was even more alarmed. His 8 great domains surged out uncontrollably. Was there a need to ask who was about to appear? Ancient God Jiulong. He had appeared, just as everyone expected. Run! Suyu bellowed. Ancient God Jiulong had appeared at this moment, deliberately saving the Lord of Nirvana and injuring heaven-splitting Patriarch. This was definitely not an unintentional move. He must have planned this for a long time. He had been waiting for this day. The group of Almighties and common people felt a chill run down their spines, their hair standing on end as they ran. At this very moment, how could they care about the Lord of Nirvana? The Lord of Nirvana was also extremely fearful of ancient God Jiulong, so he turned and ran. The 2 paths into the abyss began their desperate escape. At the same time, they were fleeing from a nightmarish existence. Gurgle. What made them terrified was that, as they ran forward, a series of bubbles emerged from beneath their feet. They could imagine it. It was ancient God Nine Dragon, who was chasing them down below. Ancient God Jiulong had not appeared. However, the series of bubbles that kept following them gave them even more fear. Some of them were trembling from head to toe, unable to run even if they wanted to. Because there were so many of them, they were practically squeezed in the middle and forced to run. It was simply too terrifying. Walala. At this moment, it was no longer just a series of bubbles. The abyss water beneath their feet began to churn. This proved that ancient god Cauldron was rapidly rising to the surface. Once this happened, the abyss path could be smashed apart by ancient god Cauldron's massive body. Everyone would be buried in the abyss. The threat of fate in front of Su Yu's chest rose and fell in a complicated manner. Even he could no longer see through the changes in his fate. He might die. He might return to nothingness. He might even fall into the abyss and become an existence like ancient god Cauldron. Rumble. Suddenly, a massive and savage tail covered in barbs suddenly rose up from the water. Then it smashed into the abyss. The abyss path behind all the living beings was severed, and they all sank into the abyss. All the living beings trembled in fear. The demon emperor's eyes were also filled with fear as he roared, "Ancient god Cauldron, you were once a member of the void. Why are you helping the sacred mountain against your former comrades?" Ancient god Nine Dragons' deep, resonant, and indifferent voice came from the bottom of the water. "Who is your compatriot? I am a #1 ancient god in the world. You ants cannot even be mentioned in the same breath as me." As he spoke, the abyss path suddenly began to rise and fall. Ancient god Cauldron's massive head had sped up, creating massive waves. Su Yu's heart sank. He glanced at the temple of Tai Chu, which was still some distance away, and roared, "Great spatial shift." He pushed the Yuan-level space domain to its limits. All the living beings on the path of the abyss underwent an unprecedented super shift. Whoosh! Just as they were about to be shifted away, the abyss path beneath their feet was smashed into smithereens by a massive and savage head that had emerged from the water. Two eyes as red as volcanoes coldly and emotionlessly stared at the fleeing living beings. "All of you, come down and accompany me," ancient god Cauldron indifferently said. His massive body fiercely twisted. It immediately caused massive waves to surge through the abyss. In just an instant, the abyss path twisted and contorted like a giant dancing snake. Chapter 2863. It looked like it was about to shatter. Su Yu and the others had just finished teleporting. Their bodies were unsteady, and they were about to fall. Ancient god Cauldron took the opportunity to leap up. An enormous, terrifying body leapt into the air and crashed down on them. This pressure, no living creature could escape. They would all fall into the abyss. The living creatures were in utter despair. But at that moment, a gray current of air swept through the air, slapping ancient god Cauldron's body back into the abyss. Waves of tens of thousands of feet were raised. The waves came crashing down on the people on the path of the abyss. They would not be able to escape. "All of you run." A hoarse, deafening cry rang out. An extremely old white-haired man appeared in front of them. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and executed a technique that Su Yu was once very familiar with. Sky-splitting yin-yang style. Wizard Ancestor. At the crucial moment, the wizard ancestor, who had been enslaved by ancient god Cauldron, had appeared. He had used his sorcery energy to return ancient god Cauldron's body and block the waves of the abyss. Su Yu was moved. The wizard ancestor had dared to resist ancient god Cauldron. His fate was clear. He was using his life to fight for a chance for the people to escape. Hot tears welled up in Su Yu's eyes as he roared, "Go!" The roar jolted the stunned people back to their senses. Filled with emotion, they charged toward the Taichu temple one last time. Behind them, ancient god Cauldron's gloomy roar rang out. "Wizard ancestor, a slave like you wants to resist me?" The wizard ancestor stood in front of the path of the abyss. His face was filled with determination. "Ancient god Cauldron, stop. For power, you have already lost your original heart." Although the original ancient god Cauldron's methods were despicable, his original intentions were the same as the people of nothingness. It was all for the sake of resisting the sacred mountain and restoring peace to Taichu. However, ancient god Cauldron had been in the abyss for many years and was no longer the ancient god Cauldron of the past. Now, he only wanted to seek greater power, to the point where he did not hesitate to drag the people he had once protected into the abyss and make them his slaves. Power is the source of all change, ancient god Jiulong said coldly. The wizard ancestor knew that he could no longer dissuade ancient god Jiulong, so he could only stand in front of him. Ancient god Jiulong said emotionlessly, "You asked for to..." Bang! His huge and ferocious tail suddenly lashed out from the abyss and whipped at the Grand Wizard, as well as the living beings on the path of the abyss. If the Grand Wizard stepped aside, then the common people would be wiped out. If he don't, he would be the one to bear it. With a strong sense of righteousness, the ancestor of Shaman yelled, "The world is boundless, and the ancestors are the pillars. Our ancestors are the backbone of this world." The human ancestor was like that. The dragon ancestor was like that. It was the same for the sorcerer ancestor. They were the backbone of the world, the forerunners who protected the common people. Anyone can step down. Only they could not. Bang! The giant tail descended. It fiercely swept across the body of the Grand Wizard, who, his body rapidly retreated, leaving a long trail of flames in the air. He blocked it. He used his own body to block ancient god Nine Dragon's tail. But his body was full of cracks. The blood of the ancestral, which sprayed onto the living beings behind him. His blood formed a rain of blood, sprinkling on the faces of every living being, sprinkling on the hearts of every living being. As long as the common people exist, the ancestors shall not perish. The ancestral witch roared. His arms lifted ancient god Nine Dragon's tail. This gave the common people even more chances to escape. Ancient god Nine Dragon's eyes were indifferent. If you were at your peak, you might have been able to fight a few rounds with me. But now you're too old. The ancestral witch, who had lived from the previous era until now, was already rotten beyond belief. Ancient god Nine Dragon's tail swung forcefully. Whew! The ancestral which was pressed against the path of the abyss. He struggled powerlessly under the giant tail. But what was powerless was his body, not his will. Suyu, the future is in your hands. The ancestral witch roared. Whew! Ancient god Nine Dragon's giant tail pressed down once more. With a squelch, the ancestral witch's body was crushed into a bloody mist, completely disappearing from the world. An ancient ancestor had passed away, just like that. As a slave, he had used his life to pave a path for the common people. At this moment, they were very close to the Taichu temple. In a few breaths, they would be able to cross it. Go! The ancestral witch's dying cry echoed in Suyu's ears. Grief and indignation reverberated in his heart. Ancient god Nine Dragon, one day, I will make you regret this for the rest of your life. Suyu roared at the top of his lungs. Ancient god Nine Dragon's eyes were indifferent. Say that when you have the chance. Suddenly, its huge body suddenly sank. The demon emperor and the others sensed that something was wrong and cried out, "Get to the shore." They flew toward the Taichu temple. But just as they were about to reach the end of the path of the abyss at the end suddenly exploded. A savage head poked out from beneath the water. Two blood-red and sinister eyes were revealed, coldly staring at them. It's useless. None of you can escape. As it spoke, a terrifying red light began to brew in its massive eyes. This red light had the power to destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. It was enough to annihilate all the living beings on the path of the abyss and wipe them out of existence. This was a moment of life and death. A cold rebuke came. Ancient god Nine Dragon, it's been many years. I wonder if you can withstand one more blow from this body. The familiar cold voice caused ancient god Nine Dragon's massive body to fiercely tremble. He recognized the source of the voice. His massive blood-red eyes flickered with fear. You didn't die? Back then, he was knocked into the abyss by a woman, which caused him to be trapped here for countless years. That woman was a sinful woman, Chi, in the Heavenly Court's battleship among the common people. Sinful girl, who was sitting cross-legged on the deck, suddenly opened her pitch-black eyes. A terrifying power that could overturn heaven and earth erupted from his body. She took a step forward. The entire abyss sank down. She walked through the air, and every step she took had the power to overturn heaven and earth. Ancient god Nine Dragon's eyes were filled with fear as he madly sank into the water. The sinful lady's face was ice cold as she unsheathed her sword. The sin sword in his hand turned into a black dragon and pierced into the water. Roar! Ancient god Nine Dragon roared in pain from the depths of the water. Countless people were shocked. It could actually injure ancient god Nine Dragon? Was this sinful woman the scariest? The sinful girl floated in midair and said, "Still not coming ashore?" Everyone was startled and desperately went ashore. But he had not yet reached the shore. Suddenly, ancient god Nine Dragon's massive tail emerged from the water and smashed it against the evil girl's body. Puff! The sinful girl's body exploded and her soul was extinguished. She plummeted straight into the abyss. Suyu's eyes bulged as he grabbed the sinful girl. He raised his head. Ancient god Nine Dragon had resurfaced, appearing at the end of the abyss path. He blocked the path of all living beings. In his mouth was a pitch-black sword. He wasn't injured. He was just pretending. Ancient god Nine Dragon spat out the sin sword and sneered. "Do you really think I can't tell that you've only temporarily recovered your strength? You're an arrow at the end of its flight, yet you still want to contend with this ancient god?" The sinful girl had only temporarily reached her peak, but ancient god Nine Dragon had completely surpassed his peak. Chapter 2864. The strength of both sides had long since undergone a complete upheaval. The sinful girl was still the sinful girl of the past. Ancient god Nine Dragons, on the other hand, had already been baptized by the abyssal water into a monster. Their strengths had long since been reversed. In Suyu's arms, the evil girl's dispersed soul turned into fluorescent light that drifted in all directions. It was only by relying on a strong will that he managed to cling onto the surface of his body. Suyu's heart was bleeding as he felt the sinful lady's body temperature rapidly disappearing. Rise from the dead. He tried to use the domain of life. However, it was unable to prevent the soul from dispersing. It was impossible to stop his life from slipping away. It was as if there was an invisible force that was obstructing everything. "Don't waste your energy. That attack just now contained my death domain. You won't be able to save him with just your domain," ancient god Nine Dragons said sternly. It was also an elemental realm. However, ancient god Jiolong had cultivated for countless years, and his domain was more profound than Suyu's. That was why it was ineffective. Suyu wasn't willing to give up, so he used the space-time domain. However, it was still blocked by the invisible power that remained on sinful girl's body. Suyu's heart was bleeding as he watched the sinful woman disappear one after another. He shouted no. How could he watch as this face, which was exactly the same as Xia Jingyu's, disappeared from his life? They were once enemies. Then we became friends. Later on, it was his benefactor. It was he who had used his own kiss to save him from being demonized. "I don't want you to die," Suyu bellowed. He was trying his best to save the sinful woman, but it was all in vain. In front of ancient god Jiolong, Suyu seemed abnormally weak. "My heart. I still have Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's heart." Suyu thought of Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's heart. If he used the blood inside, would he be able to awaken the chaotic energy in the evil girl's body and give her a chance to be reborn? However, at this moment, the sinful lady, whose consciousness was gradually fading away, raised her palm with great difficulty and covered Suyu's chest. Feeling the beating heart, the sinful girl said weakly, "Don't, your heart. You have to keep it for Xia Jingyu." No, Suyu couldn't accept the sinful woman's death, so he said resolutely, "No matter what price I have to pay, I must save you. I don't want you to die." Too many people had passed away in his life. He absolutely did not want to bear the burden of the death of someone close to him again. Suyu Pride opened the sinful woman's hand and pointed his finger at his heart. He wanted to extract a drop of heart blood. Right now, he couldn't care less. The sinful girl's face twitched slightly. His lips moved up stiffly and slightly. That was laughter. This was the first time in her life that she had ever smiled. "I finally understand why Xia Jingyu and Chin are so devoted to you." The sinful woman said with relief, "You are worth it, even the heartless her." At this moment, she was touched by Su Yu. In his life, if there was a person who was willing to risk his life for him, regardless of loss or gain, even disregarding life and death, how could he not be moved? Su Yu did not say a word as he inserted his finger into his heart. The sinful lady's consciousness began to blur, and she murmured, "Don't waste it. I'm someone who has died once. Now that I'm alive in this world again, I'm already very lucky. It's just a pity that I couldn't help you." The evil girl slowly closed her eyes. He could no longer speak. Her body was turning cold at an alarming speed. "No." Sensing that the sinful lady was about to die, Su Yu's heart was filled with grief. Why did the people in his life always leave him one by one? Why? Was he too weak? Wasn't he? The ancient god Jiulong did not care about Su Yu's state of mind. An intense blood-red light was brewing in his eyes as he looked at the world with an indifferent expression. Pathetic little ants. Only the weak will grieve over the loss of their companions. Come with me and feel the great power. He was going to bring all the people into the abyss. Su Yu looked over. The gaze from his eyes was like a solid pillar of ice. At this moment, his hatred for the ancient god Jiulong had reached the peak. "You killed my wife, my old friend, and now you're going to kill my senior sister. You're going to destroy all my people." So you put down the sinful lady. His eyes were bloodshot. Black flames surged uncontrollably all over his body once again. That was a sign of demonization. The difference was, in the past, demonization had been irrational. The current demonization was filled with endless madness. You think your strength is above all else, don't you? You think you can decide the fate of the world, don't you? So you walked over fearlessly. He turned a blind eye to the dark red gaze. It was just a move in the air. The great scythe of 10,000 tribulations appeared in his palm. The ancient god Jiulong stared at Su Yu, his eyes narrowing slightly. He did not know why, but he actually felt a hint of danger. But as he sized up Su Yu, he could not see any part of him that could threaten him. Just based on the realm of the master of the heavenly law that he had just broken through, just based on his Yuan realm, which was inferior to his own, just based on the ordinary great scythe of 10,000 tribulations in his hand. But strangely, the ancient god Jiulong felt a hint of danger to his life. If he were facing someone else, he would probably be on his guard and retreat immediately. But facing Su Yu, he could not think of any danger. "Aunt, do you think I'm afraid of you?" The ancient god's eyes exploded, and a thick blood-red beam of light shot out. That beam of light could instantly destroy the path of the abyss, along with all the people on it. Su Yu did not retreat. He walked to the front of all living beings in one step. The pitch-black demonic shadow was like a giant that fought against the world alone, defending the battlefield and resisting the enemy. "Ancient god Jiulong," Su Yu bellowed. He then raised the scythe of 10,000 tribulations. He did not stab at ancient god Nine Dragon. Instead, it was aimed at him. To be exact, it was aimed at his own heart. Puff! The sharp great sickle of 10,000 tribulations pierced through Su Yu's clothes and flesh. It also pierced through the heart. Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's stone heart was broken. The blood in his heart gushed out like a fountain. In an instant, the entire scythe of 10,000 calamity was dyed red. Shaddai once said that the myriad tribulations scythe required chaotic energy to activate. Wasn't the place with the densest chaotic force his heart's blood? Right now, the scythe of 10,000 tribulations was stained with the purest blood of chaos in the world. It would be stimulated like never before. Roar suddenly. A deafening roar came from inside the great scythe of 10,000 calamities. The entire scythe of 10,000 tribulations shook violently. The ear-piercing sound waves splashed the waters of the abyss on both sides 100 feet high. The two blood-red beams of light shot out by the ancient god Jiulong were instantly shattered by the roar. Not only that, ancient god Jiulong felt a stabbing pain in his eyes, and his whole body trembled violently. He cried out involuntarily, the Taotai ancestor, between heaven and earth. Chapter 2865. That Taotai had only lived for one epoch. However, the Taotai ancestor it mentioned was a creature that had existed since the beginning of absolute beginning. It was said that it was the spiritual pet of the first Taoist master in the world, the Taichu Taoist master. Later on, after the Taichu Tao Lord disappeared without a trace, the Taotai ancestor also went missing. Who would have thought that it would be refined into a Tao artifact? It looked at the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations in Su Yu's hand again. The long handle had turned into a pale spine at some point in time. The 9 black heads on it burned with golden flames. The originally black head was burned to a golden color. Subsequently, the 10th golden head slowly appeared. Fear appeared in ancient god 9 Dragon's eyes. Rumor had it that the Taotai ancestor had 10 heads. One was the main head, and the other 9 were the secondary heads. Among them, the most terrifying was the main head in the middle. Once the eyes were fully opened, the power would not be inferior to the destruction of an era. Ancient god 9 Dragon's massive body fiercely trembled. The 10th golden head was slowly opening its eyes. Furthermore, he was preparing to open them completely. Stop! Ancient god 9 Dragons let out a fearful roar. The Taotai ancestor will not only kill me, but he will also suck the blood from your heart. The Taotai was an existence that could swallow anything. Apart from the Taichu Taoist master, no one could tame him. Once it fully opened its eyes, it would no longer be able to distinguish between friend and foe. Su Yu's reply was an even deeper sneer. He pressed down hard, and the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations pierced deeper into his heart. He laughed coldly. Are you afraid? Regret? Didn't you want to exterminate all living beings? Come on. Ancient god 9 Dragons said hatefully, Madman, what a lunatic. He was completely terrified. If they didn't leave now, they would wait for the Taotai ancestor to fully awaken. It was useless no matter where he hid. At this moment, how could ancient god 9 Dragon have any time to worry about these ants? How could he care about Su Yu, a person he had to kill? Its huge body sank into the abyss. Who said you could leave? Su Yu pulled out the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. He swung it down into the abyss like a madman. 10 golden light pillars descended with a rumble. This time, ancient god 9 Dragon once more screamed in pain. What was different was that this time, he was really screaming. Large patches of 9 colors appeared in the water of the abyss. This was the blood of ancient god 9 Dragon. Su Yu held the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations in his hand and waved it towards the water. Again and again and again and again. In the water, ancient god 9 Dragon, who hadn't been able to escape to the bottom of the abyss in time, continued to scream, as well as the 9-colored blood that kept surging up. Su Yu, one day, this ancient god will grind your bones to dust. Ancient god 9 Dragon's tiny voice came from the depths of the water. It was about to escape. Su Yu furiously roared, Die. This attack happened to be at the moment when the eyes of the central head were opened to their widest. It spat out a different dark golden light from its mouth. Bang! The dark golden light shot into the water and directly swallowed up all the water in the vicinity. A bottomless pit that was 1,000 feet wide appeared. At the bottom of the abyss, a huge, pitch-black beast could be seen fleeing frantically towards the bottom of the abyss. The dark golden beam shot towards the giant shadow. The latter turned pale with fright and fled in panic. However, his body was still penetrated by the dark golden light. Roar! An earth-shattering scream of extreme pain rose into the sky. The dark golden light had penetrated the lower half of ancient god 9 Dragon's body. 1,000 feet long bloody hole was formed in his body. The flesh and blood inside were all swallowed up by the dark golden light. Thus, his long tail and torso were severed. Su Yu continued to wave the scythe like a madman, unwilling to give up and wanting to kill ancient god 9 Dragon. However, he had already taken the opportunity to escape deeper into the abyss. He couldn't attack him anymore. No! Suyu lost all reason and waved the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. A dark golden pillar of light struck the other abyss path without any deviation. Bang! The abyss road where Nirvana Master was severed on the spot and shattered into pieces. What was even more surprising was his Nirvana warship happened to be swept by the dark golden beam of light and was immediately swallowed up, leaving nothing behind. Nirvana Master's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. My ship! Those were the guardians and apostles he had painstakingly trained for countless years, and the various resources he had accumulated for 2 eras. He had planned to bring them to the 9-star civilization and use these resources, guardians, and apostles to establish an even larger faith organization. Now, they were all destroyed. However, Nirvana Master's cry of alarm drew Suyu's attention. His eyes were blood red as he bellowed, "You deserve to die too." Nirvana Master was scared out of his wits, and cold air ran from the soles of his feet. He wanted to slap himself in the face. He had called for Suyu to come over. It was too late to say anything. Nirvana Master immediately went ashore and rushed into the Taichu Temple on the island. Suyu's great scythe of 10,000 tribulations arrived, and a dark golden beam of light bombarded the island. However, this island was extremely mysterious. The destructive power of the dark golden beam of light dissipated as it approached the island. The enemies had all fled. Suyu had no one to attack, so he finally stopped. The blood-red color in his eyes slowly receded. Looking at the devastation around him, Suyu sat down on the ground, exhausted. He put away the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. Looking at his heart that was about to heal, endless exhaustion quickly engulfed him. It was an uncontrollable exhaustion. It was more intense than any other time. Suyu knew that he was going to fall into Prince Mirrorflower's dream again. No one could stop him. However, before he lost consciousness, Suyu crawled to the sinful lady with difficulty, and while the wound in his heart had not healed, he held her in his arms. Then, he dripped the last drop of blood from the wound in his heart into the sinful lady's mouth. It was just as she had guessed. After receiving the chaotic power of the Heavenly Sun's blood, the power of the domain left by ancient god Julong in the sinful lady's body disintegrated. Her injuries were recovering at an astonishing speed. Not long after, she regained consciousness. She looked at Suyu, who was holding her in his arms. The sinful lady did not resist. For the first time, she showed a gentle expression and hugged the exhausted Suyu. Her eyes were moist. Although her consciousness was on the brink of collapse, she still dared to feel what was happening in the outside world. She looked at Suyu, who had gone crazy and killed ancient god Jiolong at all costs for her. Her frozen heart was suddenly opened. For the first time, she had an impulse to stay by someone's side for the rest of her life, never to be separated. And that person was Suyu. Suyu's consciousness began to blur, and his eyelids kept drooping. He knew that he was about to fall into Prince Mirrorflower's dream. Prince Mirrorflower had failed last time. This time, he would never let Suyu escape again. The sinful lady sensed it, and her heart was nervous like never before. She tried to wake Suyu up. "Don't sleep. Don't sleep." Chapter 2866. Soft lips touched. Suyu, who was about to fall asleep, suddenly shuddered. That kiss was so familiar. He opened his eyes again and looked at the evil woman who was close to him in confusion. His eyes were no longer cold, but gentle. For a time, Suyu had an illusion. The person in front of him was Xia Jingyu, not the evil girl. Fortunately, he was more clear-headed and understood that the person hugging him was not Xia Jingyu, who was far away in the 9-star civilization. She was just a sinful girl. "Thank you." As soon as Suyu spoke, he felt sleepy again. He knew there was no way he could escape this time. While he was still awake, he had to make arrangements for the common people. "Quickly get on the island." Suyu shouted with all his might. The peerless almighties could only temporarily put aside their worries about Suyu and lead the crowd into the island. Suyu arrived at the island with the help of the sinful woman. He faced the ancient Taichu temple on the island. From the common people to the peerless almighties, they all had a kind of respect that came from the bottom of their hearts. Taichu Temple, in the great hall built by the first Lord. In the past, it was the holy land of martial arts that all martial artists yearned for. It was the most mythical place in people's hearts. Right now, there was no one inside. There were too many living beings, and they couldn't all enter. They waited outside. The peerless powerhouses entered in their place to pluck the leaves and cross the remaining abyss. The group entered. The Hall of Absolute Beginning had been abandoned for many years, but shockingly, it was still completely spotless. It was as if someone was taking care of it every day. All the items were arranged neatly and looked as clean as new. So you look? Isn't that your heavenly orchid silver bamboo? Xiao Dai had appeared out of nowhere. He excitedly pointed at the flowers and plants on both sides of the entrance of the hall. Among them, there was a silvery bamboo forest that was especially eye-catching. Suyu looked over and couldn't help but be shocked. It's true. Thousands of heavenly orchid silver bamboos grew densely there, dancing in the wind. Little butterfly grew out of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, so she had a special feeling for this divine tree. She licked her lips and strode forward, ready to pull one or two out to taste. However, Suyu pressed down on his shoulder. Are you tired of living? Suyu glared at her. Xiao Dai looked around. Why? Suyu pointed at the surroundings. Do you think you're the only one who recognized the heavenly orchid silver bamboo? From ancient times till now, it was unknown how many epochs it had experienced. Countless people have come to Taichu Temple, right? Why are they still alive? Xiao Dai thought about it carefully. That's true. After some thought, Xiao Dai took out a stone and threw it far away. A shocking scene appeared. When the stone hit the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, a ripple that was so weak that it was almost invisible appeared on it. With a light shake, the stone was shattered into powder. That was not all. When the powder fell to the ground, another ripple shot out from the green bricks on the ground, crushing the powder into nothingness. Everyone who was about to step into the Hall of Absolute Beginning suddenly took a step back. Even the peerless mighty figures were filled with fear. They finally understood why the uninhabited Taichu Hall was untainted by even a speck of dust. That was because there were restrictions in the Hall of Absolute Beginning. Everything that entered it was crushed into nothingness. Now, how do we get there? Everyone was at a loss. If he couldn't enter the Hall of Taichu, how could he pluck the leaves? So he was full of doubts. Master, where did you get the news that the Hall of Absolute Beginning has leaves that can lead to the 9-star civilization? Suyu asked in surprise. He had a rather bad feeling in his heart. Yin Yazi said thoughtfully, I heard it from a few peerless mighty figures after I came to the inner abyss. Suyu couldn't help but look at them. Who said that? But who knew? The dozens of peerless mighty figures looked at each other. They had all heard it from others. None of them had ever said so. Suyu suddenly felt that there was a problem. Everyone, look at each other and see who is the first to spread the news, Suyu said. With his current prestige, he could order them around. A group of peerless mighty figures asked each other. Finally, after tracing the source, they suddenly realized something. The first to say it was the master of nirvana. It's him. Suyu thought to himself. There was a big problem with this statement. In the past, everyone was still confused by the appearance of the master of nirvana and admired him. Therefore, they did not question it. Now it seemed that there was a big problem. The Hall of Absolute Beginning could be shattered into nothingness if they took even a step inside. How could they allow living creatures to enter? For a moment, the crowd immediately panicked and became restless. Now that the inner abyss had been destroyed, the path back to the abyss had also been destroyed by ancient god Jiolon. There was no way forward again. Were they going to be trapped on the island? Don't panic, everyone. Check the surroundings carefully first, Suyu said decisively. The master of nirvana had entered the Hall of Absolute Beginning himself. Why was he fine? He must have hidden the key point. The most important thing now is to find the clues left behind by the master of nirvana, Suyu analyzed calmly. He had to point out a way for the people before he passed out. Clang! But right at that moment, the giant gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning behind them slammed shut. Oh no! Suyu immediately realized that something was wrong. He didn't have to think to know that the master of nirvana was behind this. Everyone rushed back, trying to reopen the giant gate in panic. However, Suyu shouted loudly, "Stop!" His voice drowned out the people, but it could not suppress the panic in their hearts. They still rushed towards the gate. They had no choice. Suyu took out the cavern world he had obtained and released all the faith in it. It was only under the pressure of faith that the common people were suppressed. Suyu said seriously, "The more dangerous the moment, the calmer you must be. Don't panic." He added, "The Master of Nirvana closed the gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning. He must have expected that you would turn back towards the gate. There must be dangers beyond your imagination there." Everyone felt that it made sense. But they were imprisoned in the dangerous Hall of Absolute Beginning. Who didn't want to get lucky? What if the gate could be opened and there was no danger? "Step back, I'll show you," Suyu shouted. After everyone stepped back, Suyu took out the incarnation of the past. The latter nodded and came to the gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning. It pushed hard with both hands, tried to push the gate open. But the strength of the incarnation of the past was reflected back tenfold by the gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning. There was a bang. The incarnation of the past was shattered into a bloody mist on the spot. At the same time, countless ripples burst out from the gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning, crushing the bloody mist into nothingness. Hiss! All living beings sucked in a cold breath. Their scalps went numb. What Suyu said was right. The Master of Nirvana was forcing them to open the gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning. They couldn't imagine what would happen if all of them tried to open the gate. How terrifying would it be when everyone's strength was reflected back tenfold? Except for a few rare, peerless masters, wouldn't they all die without a burial place? Holy Body Su, please show us the way. At this moment, all the people were sincerely convinced by Suyu. Who would dare to disobey him? Their faith in Suyu now surpassed even that of the Renzu. The Renzu was too ethereal, but Suyu was in front of them, a living god of protection. Chapter 2867. Suyu pointed to the depths of the Taichu Palace with the help of the evil girl. "That is your way out," Suyu said calmly and forcefully. The people were confused. They were trapped here because they could not enter that place. Suyu said, "The Lord of Nirvana can control the closing of the giant door, so he must know the existence of some mechanism. He must be in the depths of the palace. As long as you look hard, you will find the traces left by the Lord of Nirvana." In fact, while Suyu was speaking, he had already noticed some clues. However, he was about to fall into a coma. In the future, he might not be able to do anything for the people. Therefore, they needed to learn how to help themselves. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. The people immediately began to search. 3 heads were better than 1. With so many pairs of eyes, they would naturally find something. "Hey, there seems to be a speck of dust on this bluestone brick." Finally, one of the creatures noticed. The people looked in the direction of his gaze. They clearly found that there was a speck of dust on a bluestone brick. If they looked closely, they would also find that the bluestone brick had been carefully cleaned. However, there was still a speck of dust left, which they did not notice. There is a seal on the bluestone. How can there be no reaction when the dust falls on it? The people's hearts immediately became active. "Let me try." One of them took a stone and threw it on it. As a result, the stone was safe and sound. The people could not help but be pleasantly surprised. Not all places have seals. To them, this was an extremely exciting piece of news. The Demon Emperor understood and stepped forward. "Step back." He grabbed a handful of dust from the cavern world and threw it forward. The dust fell to all corners of the palace. As a result, most of the dust was crushed into powder. Only the bluestone bricks without seals were left, covered with a thick layer of dust. And the dust-covered bluestone led directly to the depths of the Taichu Palace. That was the way out. "Great! Finally, there is a way out." Suyu smiled. "I will go in front, and you will follow behind one by one." There were only about 50 people following them, so they did not have to worry about wasting too much time. Suyu stepped on the bluestone and arrived at the depths of the palace. There were 3 doors here, each leading to a different area. After all living beings rushed over, they fell into confusion. Could it be that we need to split up? A peerless supreme being analyzed. Suyu shook his head slightly. Are you sure that the 2 extra doors are real? The Taichu Temple was a martial arts sacred ground founded by the Taichu Taoist master. The purpose was to rest and discuss martial arts. The plants and trees in the courtyard and the limestone slabs on the ground were there to prevent people from destroying them, so it was reasonable for them to set up restrictions. However, what was the use of specially setting up 2 more doors? Did he want people to guess riddles, and whoever guessed correctly could enter? Obviously not. If he was not wrong, 2 of the doors were fake and full of danger. Suyu squinted his eyes and searched carefully. After a while, he had an idea. This time, he chose to let them deal with it themselves. Sage Su's meaning is that this is also the doing of the Lord of Nirvana? A creature asked. Suyu nodded and said, I can only tell you this. If you all go to the 9-star civilization, what will happen to the Nirvana Lord? Of course, he will be ganged up on by them and die. Before going to the 9-star civilization, he will try his best to put us to death to reduce his own threat. That was all he said. The rest was for the common people to think about. Sure enough, after Suyu's reminder, they immediately understood what he meant. Carefully test the 3 doors. The group of people all retreated cautiously. Heaven's splitting ancestor pulled out a chain and threw it at the middle door. However, as soon as the chain opened the door, a gust of black air spurted out. In an instant, the chain was destroyed into molten iron. Seeing that the situation was not good, Heaven's splitting ancestor dodged in time. Even so, he was scratched a little, and he was bleeding all over on the spot. This was because of his powerful cultivation. It was conceivable. If it had been an ordinary creature opening this door, what would have happened? Everyone would have died. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and rejoiced. Fortunately, Suyu had reminded them. Otherwise, they would have lost at least 2 groups of people. Heaven's splitting ancestor struck while the iron was hot and tried to test the other 2 doors. Sure enough, one of the doors was fake. The leftmost door was the real entrance to the inner yard. At that time, in a corner, the Nirvana Master's face was gloomy as he slammed his fists on a stone table. Deep fist marks were left on the table. How troublesome, the Nirvana Master said bitterly. If not for Suyu's reminder, this group of people and peerless powerful people who came in would have been wiped out. However, Suyu not only had incredible foresight, but he was also extremely smart. He was even more experienced than the peerless powerful people of the older generation. He was observant and observant. Now, in the end, he could not stop them, and they broke into the inner yard. He snorted, left the secret room, and quickly came to a small, independent yard. In the yard, there was a strange, ancient tree. It was covered with giant leaves shaped like small boats. Looking at the tree, the Nirvana Master smiled coldly. I don't believe you can see through everything. He plucked a leaf, put it in the space storage device, and hid in the dark. Suyu and the others opened the real door and arrived at the inner yard. The inner yard was a place to rest and also a place to practice martial arts. There was also an open-air platform. There were many ancient marks left on it. Those marks were left by the peerless, powerful people who came to the Taichu Palace to discuss martial arts. Many years had passed. The marks were still there, but the powerful people had long disappeared in the dust of history. This time, without Suyu saying anything, they were already extremely vigilant. The Demon Emperor grabbed a handful of sand and threw it out. In the end, except for the planted spiritual plants and trees, the rest of the land could be set foot on, and there were no barriers. We can move freely here. Everyone was delighted, and they rushed into the yard. They were most curious about the ancient platform. It was the place where the saints of the past discussed martial arts. Many peerless, powerful people's first goal was to go up there and see the legendary holy land of martial arts. So you could not help but be curious. Help me up there. The sinful lady had a gentle look on her face as she helped Suyu up the ancient platform. When they stepped on the stairs, Suyu felt an inexplicable sense of desolation. His heart, which had been silent for a long time, was surging. He had a kind of heroic impulse to compete with the heroes of the world. When he touched the marks on it, Suyu felt the intensity of the reincarnation path in the past. In the end, they went up the ancient platform. Their whole body was filled with unimaginably fierce fighting spirit. Chapter 28:68. Hey, this is the magical power of our wood ancestor, a peerless expert said in surprise. On the platform, he found the magical power of the wood ancestor that he was only proficient in. This is the magical power of our yew ancestor. Oh my God, isn't this the magical power of our bird ancestor? Everyone found that the secret skills they were proficient in were all left on the platform. They were all ancestor-level existences who had survived from the last era. They were the ancestors of a certain kind of creature that had never been seen before and would never be seen again. However, the secret skills they created were all similar to those on the platform. What's going on? It seems to be more profound and mysterious than mine. Mine too. Who left these behind? So you was thinking. All living creatures had existed since ancient times. It was believed that 2 epochs ago, each race also had their own race's strongest powerhouse. However, they might not have called themselves ancestors. Just like in the current era, there were only 9 great ancient gods, but no ancestors. A long time ago, there were ancestors of the same race who reached the peak of their race and came to this holy land of martial arts to practice martial arts. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. The 9 great realms had existed since ancient times and were not exclusive to the 9 great ancient gods. Were there any remnants of the 9 great realms on it? He searched one by one. Strangely, there were no 9 great realms. As for the last mysterious domain, Suyu didn't even know what it was. However, he couldn't find any of the other 8 great realms. How is this possible? Suyu was puzzled. Could it be that no one had practiced the 8 great realms before this era? This shouldn't be the case. It seems that there are no traces of the 8 great realms. The sinful lady was helping to search. She found the realm of sin, an extremely rare remnant of the realm. She couldn't find the 8 great realms. Could it have been destroyed by someone? Suyu pondered for a moment. There were indeed some damages on the platform. Some seemed to have been fought a long time ago. There were some who weren't. But who could it be? Everyone found something, except Suyu, who found nothing. Seeing that everyone had almost digested the remnants, he said, "It's time to go." Everyone split up and search each room. Whatever you find will depend on your own fate. If you run into danger, that's your fate. They had already arrived at the holy land of martial arts of the Taichu Temple, so it would be a shame if they did not gain anything. As for Suyu, he sat cross-legged on the platform and prepared to rest. His heart was filled with endless fatigue. Faintly, he was about to fall into a deep slumber. Right now, he was relying on his willpower to persevere. Persevere until all living beings have crossed the abyss. But he didn't expect. The moment Suyu sat on the platform, all kinds of secret techniques in his body were automatically released. The first was the human clan's divine physique, followed by the 8 domains, and then the various secret techniques he had learned in his life. From the blue sky, underworld, to the heaven sun gazing at air, when he first entered the martial path. Without exception, all of them were released. But what was even more shocking was yet to come. As soon as the secret technique appeared, all the carvings on the platform were activated. Every notch turned into a blurry residual shadow, fighting against the secret technique displayed by Suyu. Suyu was dazzled and surprised by the sight. The competition between the moves was very fast. Almost every time they exchanged blows, they would switch to another secret technique. And once Suyu's secret technique failed, it would disappear completely. Just like that. After half an hour, Suyu was left with only one secret technique left on the platform. It was a secret technique that Suyu had never thought of. The heaven sun gazing at air. Even the human clan's divine physique and the 8 domains were defeated by a certain tyrannical existence's precious technique. Only the heaven sun gazing at air remained standing, defeating all the remnant marks one by one. The heaven sun gazing at air. Suyu himself was stunned. The sinful lady beside him was even more surprised. She had fought with Suyu many times and felt that the human clan's divine physique was the greatest threat. The other techniques, including the heaven sun gazing at air, were not worth mentioning at all. How could it defeat all the remnant marks? Unbelievable. The sinful lady exclaimed, "Your heaven's sun gazing at air has defeated all the remnant marks left by the powerful beings since ancient times. Isn't this impossible? There were countless eras since ancient times, and there were countless powerful beings. It was even possible that there were beings who surpassed the human ancestor. For example, the master of the remnant technique that defeated the human clan's divine physique must have been shockingly powerful, comparable to the human ancestor. However, the heaven's sun gazing at air could defeat their remnant marks. It was unbelievable. Suyu's heart thumped with excitement. The heaven's sun gazing at air came from the bronze plate. Just now, many peerless powerful beings had actually touched the platform, but Suyu had not encountered such an encounter. Could it be that everything was related to the bronze plate? Suyu took out the half of the bronze plate that he had. He looked around and found that there was no inlay, so he placed it on the platform. An unexpected scene appeared. All the remnant marks on the platform were converging towards the half of the bronze plate. Those remnant marks carried some particles from the platform. As they gathered, the particles converged into a block, and the block condensed into a plate. That was it. Suyu watched as the broken part of the bronze plate was mended, and there was another half of it. When all the remnant marks had been absorbed, the bronze plate was completely formed. This is the complete bronze plate. The sinful lady blinked her eyes, unable to hide her surprise. Suyu also felt incredible. He had imagined what the other half of the bronze plate looked like. Most of all, the other half was also a bronze plate. However, he never thought of it. The other half of the bronze plate turned out to be the remnant marks of the martial holy land of the Taichu Temple. Looking carefully, countless tiny remnant marks appeared on the other half of the bronze plate. There were as many as tens of thousands of them. Each of them represented the top secret technique of a certain race. The other half of the bronze plate contained the top techniques of all the races in the world. One could imagine how precious it was. If it was known, it would definitely cause a worldwide uproar. If the Holy Mountain knew about it, they would destroy it at all costs, because its existence would undoubtedly enhance the overall strength of all the races, and it was a great threat to the races that ruled them. But Suyu was not most concerned about them. He was concerned about how to communicate with the realm of returning through the bronze plate. He looked left and right, but he did not see any clues. The two bronze plates were combined, but there was no obvious change. The golden ancient book that the chess boy once gave me clearly stated that the bronze plate was the divine tablet of the returning ruins that suppressed the realm of returning. Later, it was destroyed by the chaos and disappeared. One of the pieces fell into the hands of the former Soul Dominator. He did not expect the other piece to be in the martial Holy Land. It must have been hidden in the martial Holy Land by the Taichu Taoist master or some other powerful person. Only when the two bronze plates met would it emerge from the Holy Land. Chapter 2869. The golden ancient book had said that mastering the refining method would allow one to master the ultimate divine tablet. What Suyu lacked now was to refine it and make it his own. If he succeeded, he might be able to discover the secret of its connection to the ultimate world. He felt reassured. He heaved a sigh of relief. The bronze plate, no, the ultimate divine tablet, had finally been restored. He was one step closer to saving Xiener, Xie Xiaoya, and the little Kylan. Holy body, Su. I found an independent courtyard with a very strange tree inside. Come and have a look. A peerless expert came out of a spacious training room excitedly. Really? Hearing this, the other peerless mighty figures and living beings stopped searching for treasures one after another and entered that independent secret room. So you also rushed over. There was another world in this training room. This painting was connected to another place. Through the painting, a huge ancient tree in the shape of a small boat could be seen swaying in the painting. That must be the leaf they were looking for. Soon, Yin Yazi came over. He looked at an ancient book and said happily, "It's this. This is it." However, after the previous lessons, everyone was very cautious. They did not enter the painting without permission. So he was very pleased. "Some of you go in, some stay," Suyu said. Yun Yazi and the Demon Emperor said, We stay, the rest go in and pick as many leaves as possible. There were many of them, so 1 or 2 leaves might not be enough. Follow me. Suyu waved his sleeves and led the others into the painting. After testing and confirming that there was no danger in the world of the painting, they came under the ancient tree and began to pick the leaves. The leaves were picked off one by one. The whole process was very smooth. In fact, it was uncomfortably smooth. The heaven-splitting ancestor looked around from time to time and frowned. Is there a problem here? He did not see the trap set by the Lord of Nirvana. Suyu looked around vigilantly. There should be no trap. Continue picking. Soon, the last leaf was picked off. The ancient tree was bare. Let's go back immediately, Suyu said immediately. Since the task was completed, it was better not to stay in such an unstable independent space. However, when they tried to go back, they were shocked. The way back had actually disappeared. What's going on? Patriarch Sky-Splitting looked around. Did the spatial exit move? Every space had its own entrance and exit. There were no exceptions. The spatial exit should be somewhere else. If he searched carefully, he should be able to find it. However, even after searching for a long time, a hint of uneasiness appeared on his face. He still couldn't find the exit. There's no need to look for it. There really isn't a space exit in this place. Suyu slowly opened his eyes. He had tested it with his space domain. There was no spatial exit here. That's impossible. There's no such thing as a completely sealed spatial exit, Patriarch Sky-Splitting said. Any space is created by human beings. Just like a balloon, no matter what, there would always be a hole. Suyu said gravely, You have forgotten about another space. The real world. What? Heaven-Splitting Patriarch trembled violently. There was no one in the true world who did not know him. Their dream was to create their own true world and become an existence that could control their own fate. The real world, on the other hand, was a completely sealed space without any exit. The real world of this place must have been set up so that people can only enter but not leave, Suyu murmured. If I'm not mistaken, the ancient tree in our hands is fake. Heaven-Splitting Patriarch looked down. What he could not accept was that the leaves that he had painstakingly picked had all withered. Those were not leaves at all. It's the Nirvana Master. He has been deceiving us from the beginning. We have been fooled. Heaven-Splitting Patriarch finally came to his senses. The ancient tree in the painting was a bait set up by the Nirvana Master to lure them into it. In the end, there was nothing left. No, Suyu was still calm. He said, We are not the ones who have been fooled, but the Nirvana Master. Suyu's lips curled into a cold smile. In the outside world, the Demon Emperor and Yunyazi were shocked to find that Suyu and Heaven-Splitting Patriarch were trapped inside. Oh no, they seem to be in trouble. The Demon Emperor squinted his eyes. Right at that moment, a gloomy voice came from a corner. The two of them looked sideways. The space in the corner vibrated, and a man walked out with his hands clasped behind his back. He was none other than the Nirvana Master. It's you? The two of them immediately realized that this was a trap set up by the Nirvana Master. First, Suyu, who posed the greatest threat, was trapped in the painting. Then, he attacked them without hesitation and killed the Almighties one by one. You too, you have caused me so much trouble. The Nirvana Master's eyes were filled with cold, murderous intent. Thanks to them, his heavenly court's battleships had all been destroyed. His life's work had been destroyed. Of course, he had to vent his hatred on the two of them. If they had not protected Suyu, he would not be here today. Nirvana Master, let them go. The two of them shouted in unison. The Nirvana Master's eyes were cold. You should be worried about yourselves now. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness as he attacked the two of them at the same time. The two of them were shocked at first. The Nirvana Master's ruthlessness was unimaginable. However, after losing half of his faith, the Nirvana Master's strength was greatly reduced. Yunyazi and the Demon Emperor were shocked. They immediately calmed down and fought with the Nirvana Master. Both of their cultivations were extremely powerful. When they attacked, the world was turned upside down. Fortunately, this was the Taichu Palace. Such an intense battle did not harm a single brick or tile in this place. The two of them fought back and forth. After a long stalemate, the Nirvana Master finally came out on top. With the thread of faith, he severely injured the two of them. In the end, he found an opening and tore Yun Yazi's chest. Tian Shu Dao Master. The Demon Emperor roared angrily. He fought the Nirvana Master fearlessly with his demonic energy. However, the two of them could not defeat the Nirvana Master, even if they joined forces. Moreover, they were alone. The Nirvana Master immediately twisted his head off. The Demon Emperor's huge body twisted a few times before he lost all ability to move. The Nirvana Master let out a breath of turbid air and looked at the painting on the wall with a cold smile. Su Yu and the heaven-splitting ancestor were completely unaware of what was happening outside. You will be trapped in there forever. You will never be able to come out. The Nirvana Master laughed and walked away with his hands clasped behind his back. He took a step forward. Logically speaking, with his cultivation, he could travel infinitely far with a single step. However, with this step, he returned to his original spot. The corpses of Yun Yazi and the Demon Emperor were still beneath his feet. What happened? The Nirvana Master's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling. Right at that moment. Chapter 2870. The Nirvana Master had always been cunning. Upon hearing Su Yu's words, he knew that he had fallen into a trap. He immediately teleported in another direction. However, when he teleported again, he returned to the same place. Unable to believe it, he tried to break through in different directions. The result was the same. Everyone returned to the same place. What did you do? The Nirvana Master asked in shock. Su Yu, who was in the painting, smiled faintly. I gave him a taste of their own medicine, of course. A painting within a painting? He seemed to have understood something. He looked down at the corpses of Yun Yazi and the Demon Emperor. However, to his surprise, the corpses of the two quickly decayed and dissolved. At the same time, the surroundings were also dissolving. He watched helplessly as the individual cultivation room he was in gradually turned into a beautiful grassland with beautiful scenery. In the center of the grassland, there was a giant tree swaying in the wind. The tree was covered with leaves of a small boat. The Nirvana Master's expression changed drastically. A hint of fear and panic rippled in his eyes. The painting in front of him also dissolved in the end. So you smiled faintly. Stay here forever and reflect on your mistakes. No. As the painting disappeared, the Nirvana Master threw himself at it and let out an indignant roar. However, what he threw himself at was just an illusion. Looking at the sealed world around him, the Nirvana Master roared like a madman. This was the real world of the Taichu Path Master. He could not understand why he had tricked Su Yu and the others into entering the painting. Why was he the one trapped in the real world? In the outside world, Yun Yazi, the Demon Emperor, and the heaven-splitting ancestor were shocked. Their dazed and lifeless eyes regained clarity. Yun Yazi and the Demon Emperor could not help but look at their own bodies. What happened? Didn't I die just now? The Demon Emperor said in shock. Yun Yazi looked at Su Yu with a hint of horror on his face. The heaven-splitting ancestor stared blankly at the painting on the wall in front of him. In the painting, the Nirvana Master was roaring and struggling. What is going on? The heaven-splitting ancestor murmured. Su Yu's face turned pale. This is my latest soul secret technique. This technique originated from the remnant marks on the Ultimate Ruins Divine Monument. One of them had been left behind by a top-notch expert of a race called the Soul Clan a long time ago. He had used his soul power to create a supreme illusion. To confuse the real with the fake, to confuse the ages, no one could avoid this. As the owner of the real realm, Su Yu could tell that it was a real realm when they arrived in front of it. Once they entered, they would not be able to leave. Therefore, he speculated that the ancient tree inside was definitely a trap set by the Lord of Nirvana. And the Lord of Nirvana was definitely nearby. Hence, he decided to beat him at his own game. Rather than being constantly schemed against by the Nirvana Master, it was better to lure the snake out of its hole and get rid of it completely. Therefore, he used the soul secret technique in the remnant mark to create an illusion to confuse everyone. The heaven-splitting ancestor thought that he and Su Yu had entered the painting, but in fact, he was standing there motionless. The Devil Emperor and Yun Yazi thought that they had fought a great battle with the Lord of Nirvana and died in battle, but in reality, they hadn't even moved a finger. As for the Lord of Nirvana, he thought that he had succeeded in his scheme and appeared from his hiding place, but in reality, he was walking towards the painting. It had to be said that the secret soul technique was very powerful. Even someone as powerful as the Lord of Nirvana did not notice it. After they understood the cause and effect, Yun Yazi and the others instantly felt that it was inconceivable. The secret soul technique of the ancestors was extremely frightening indeed. When they noticed the Lord of Nirvana, who was trapped in the real world, they were extremely delighted. This insidious thing has finally suffered the consequences of his own actions. The Devil Emperor laughed heartily. From now on, he would stay in the painting for the rest of his life, never to come out again. Let's go. Actually, Suyu still had a way to deal a fatal blow to the Lord of Nirvana. However, his consciousness was getting more and more exhausted. If he didn't pave the final path for the common people, he wouldn't have another chance. The group left the training room and started searching for the land of leaves again. Soon after, the Devil Emperor found a real ancient tree. This tree had been hidden by a formation, so no one had discovered it when they were searching just now. The person who had hidden it was undoubtedly the Lord of Nirvana. Suyu and the others immediately plucked all the leaves and left the Taichu Palace to reunite with the common people. At this moment, the common people were scattered in the Tao abyss, looking for their own opportunities. It was very chaotic. Suyu furrowed his brows. Reunite with them and get ready to leave. Little did they know, in the Taichu Palace, from a certain corner, a figure suddenly appeared and headed straight for the secret cultivation room where the Nirvana Lord was. He wore a bamboo hat and hid his aura very well. Looking at the painting on the wall, he took off the bamboo hat and revealed Gu Taishu's face. Haha, Lord of Nirvana, to think you would have such a day. It turned out that Gu Taishu had been mingling with the common people and had followed Suyu to the island. Moreover, he had observed everything that was happening in the Taichu Palace through a secret technique. When he found out that the Lord of Nirvana was sealed in the real world, he was wild with joy. He tried his best to sneak in. He chuckled and took down the painting. He licked his lips excitedly and said, "I'll accept everything you have." With a cold smile, he put on the bamboo hat again and blended into the crowd. When he hurried back, Suyu had almost reunited with the common people. Looking at Suyu, who was commanding the people, Gu Taishu felt complicated. Compared to Suyu, the difference between him and Suyu was like heaven and earth. When Suyu looked at him, he immediately lowered his head and continued to hide. Suyu stood on the high platform and glanced at the people. His eyes narrowed slightly as he said, "There is one more person among us." Gu Taishu's heart thumped wildly when he heard this. What kind of eyesight was Suyu? There were countless people in the crowd. How could he tell that there was one more person? Gu Taishu's heart sank as he thought of Suyu's incredible calculation abilities. He would find me soon. Gu Taishu was anxious. What should I do? What should I do? I will be exposed soon. He continued to hide, hoping that even if there were many people, he might not be able to find me. Right at that moment, Suyu said coldly, "Most of the people here have been instilled with my chaotic energy. So, don't waste time on this person who has snuck into the crowd. It will be easy to find you." Gu Taishu's heart thumped. He had almost forgotten. His chaotic energy was instilled by Qin Yun. It was completely different from the chaotic energy instilled by Suyu. Suyu could obviously sense the change in the number of people. As long as he carefully investigated the people instilled by Qin Yun, he would be found soon. While his mind was in a mess, Suyu's eyes sharpened. "Since you don't want to show yourself, I will really have to find you." An unknown person had snuck into the crowd. This was no small matter. He must not be careless. Just as Gu Taishu's psychological defense was about to be broken, a smelly old man with a sack draped over his shoulders said in a hoarse voice, "There's no need to look. It's me." Chapter 2871. The people around them parted immediately. Gu Taishu was also surprised. He immediately lowered his head and stepped aside. He thought that the extra person was him. He didn't expect there to be someone else. But that wasn't right. Where did this person come from? Gu Taishu sized him up discreetly and discovered that he was extremely skinny. His spirit was dispirited and listless, and he seemed to be in dire straits. He looked like a starving man who had been imprisoned for a long time. Suyu cast his gaze over and sized him up in surprise as well. The people in the inner abyss had abundant resources. How could someone be so miserable? Who are you? Suyu stared at him, his eyes flickering. For some reason, the 8 realms he had mastered were resonating with each other. The old man in linen walked forward and took off the linen cloth on his head, revealing an extremely old head. He said hoarsely, "I'm the 9th realm master you have been looking for." Suyu's pupils constricted. The 9th realm master. To be honest, he wasn't surprised. Before coming to the Taichu temple, he had been thinking about where the 9th realm master who had escaped into the Taichu temple was. When he realized there was one more person among them, Suyu had guessed it. It was probably the 9th realm master who was hiding. Suyu stared at him, his eyes deep. "Why didn't you leave?" The 9th realm master had been here for many years. Why didn't he leave? How could I leave? The 9th realm master laughed bitterly. Upon closer inspection, the crowd realized there was no chaotic aura on the 9th realm master. What happened to you? Suyu's eyes narrowed. He looked at the 9th realm master carefully, trying to find traces of the 9th realm on him. But he found nothing. There wasn't even a trace of cultivation. I was betrayed by my own realm. The 9th realm master said shocking words. He was betrayed by his own realm? Was this a joke? Even the powerful Du Ming, who had traversed 2 eras, was shocked and in disbelief. You must be joking. How could a realm betray itself? The heaven-splitting ancestor's eyes widened. He had lived for so long and had never heard of such a thing. The 9th realm master looked at Suyu and smiled bitterly. Whether it's true or not, Holy Su should know. Everyone looked at Suyu. Suyu was silent for a long time. He didn't have the power of the realm on him, but whether the realm betrayed him or not is unknown. After all, the domain could be taken away. Moreover, he found it hard to believe that the domain would betray him. This was simply absurd. The old man said bitterly, "I was too greedy and gathered the 9 great domains in one body. I didn't expect that after the 9 great domains merged into one, it actually fused into an unimaginable existence." Suyu's heart moved. He suddenly believed the old man's words. That was because the remnant marks on the sinkhole ruin divine steel that contained information about the 8 domains had all disappeared. Why did the 8 domains on the martial arts sacred land disappear? The old man said helplessly, "It's the work of the 9 great domains. It has developed its own intelligence and won't allow another existence comparable to itself to appear, so it won't allow the 8 great domains to exist in this world. Therefore, I erased all traces of the 8 domains on the platform." Sure enough, it was impossible for there to be no remnants of the 8 domains. It was just that someone had purposely taken them away. However, Suyu was thinking about the 9th master. Who would have thought that it would be the 9th hegemon's fusion domain? As he spoke, the 9th hegemon looked at Suyu and said meaningfully, "The power of the fusion domain is extraordinary. If you encounter it, you'll most likely die. I advise you to be careful." Suyu and the ancient god Jiulong were rare existences in this world who had mastered the 8 great domains. The fusion domain didn't want a second Suyu to appear. If he found out about the existence of Suyu and the ancient god Jiulong, he would try his best to get rid of Suyu. How powerful is it? Suyu asked. The power of the 8 great domains combined was barely satisfactory. So what if the 9 great domains combined? It couldn't be that powerful. It's probably about the same as the ancient god Jiulong in the abyss. Unexpectedly, the 9th hegemon said something that was extremely shocking. Are you sure you aren't lying? Suyu squinted his eyes. The 9th hegemon smiled bitterly. Of course not. The fusion domain not only has the 9 great domains, but it also absorbed the remnant marks left by the Taichu Taoist master in the martial arts sacred land. The people were in an uproar. Many peerless almighties were even more shocked. The martial arts sacred land has the remnant marks of the Taichu Taoist master? The 9th hegemon nodded. Of course. When the Taichu Taoist master first met the heroes of the world, he demonstrated his martial path in the martial arts sacred land, leaving behind a remnant mark that was passed down to future generations. Later on, many powerful beings have received invitations to go and observe that remnant mark, said Yi Zichen. It is said that that remnant mark is the ancestor of all techniques. All the divine techniques of the various clans were derived from that remnant mark. Everyone gasped in shock. Even Suyu couldn't help but gasp. The ancestor of all techniques. All the ancestors' domains, divine techniques, and even the 9 great domains came from the remnant mark left by the Taichu Taoist master. You can imagine how powerful it is. The 9th Hegemon said, "Now, the fusion domain has that remnant mark, and its power is almost the same as that of the ancient god Jiolong. That's because he hasn't completely mastered the remnant mark. Once he does, he didn't continue because Zhongren could already imagine it. How powerful would the fusion domain be if it carried the ancestor of all techniques? So you couldn't help but touch the returning ruin's divine steel in his arms. In a sense, the remnant mark on the returning ruin's divine steel should be able to compete with the ancestor of all techniques. After all, it was a collection of all the peak secret techniques from countless eras. Can you tell me what the 9th realm is? Why did it develop its own intelligence after the fusion?" Suyu asked. The fusion of the 8 great domains didn't happen in such a strange way. After a long silence, the 9th Hegemon said slowly, "Nothing." "Nothing?" The peerless Almighty's frowned. "I asked you what kind of domain it was. Why did you say nothing?" However, Suyu waved his hand and interrupted him. "The 9th realm is nothing." The 9th Hegemon sighed. "That's right, it is nothing. Nothing means blankness. Everything is possible. It can transform into any domain you want." The 9th Hegemon revealed a shocking secret. The heaven-splitting ancestor was stunned. "So, it won't be a problem to transform into the other 8 great domains?" The 9th Hegemon nodded. "Yes, in a sense, I can replace all of the 8 great masters." Everyone gasped again. Compared to the other 8 great domains, the 9th realm, nothing was like cheating. However, it's precisely because of nothing that it has infinite possibilities. After fusing with the other 8 great domains, it developed intelligence and betrayed me. The old man was extremely lonely. It was because of this that he was trapped on the island. He didn't eat, drink, or replenish his power. Chapter 2872. That was why he was in such dire straits. If Su Yu and the others had not come, he would have been trapped on the island. Fortunately, you ran away quickly. Otherwise, you would have ended up like the other 8 masters, Yin Yazi said slowly. Everyone finally understood. The other 8 masters had all had their fortunes plundered by the ancient god Jiolong. As a result, their domain power was halved. But the 9th master was different. When he saw that the situation was not good, he escaped first. What he obtained was the most complete domain. It was conceivable. What was far more powerful than the other 8 domains. After merging with the other 8 domains, it was entirely possible for it to develop intelligence. What Suyu cared about the most was whether he could find it. He wanted to obtain Wu and forge the real divine 9-dragon cauldron with the 9 domains. He wanted to forge a true doctrine artifact that belonged to him. Do you still have a connection with it? Yes. The 9th master was very sure. He knew Su Yu's intentions. Protect me, and I will find Wu for you. Right now, he had nothing. It was good enough to be alive. He did not dare to ask for more. All right, follow me to the 9-star civilization. Su Yu looked at the other side of the island. At the end of the Dark Abyss Road was a swirling 9-color vortex. Entering the vortex meant entering the 9-star civilization. That was the last civilization of the great beginning realm. It was the place where the grudge between Su Yu and the Emperor would finally be resolved. The group of people put down the leaf boat. The abyss water was a terrible thing. Even a peerless almighty could be turned into ashes if they touched it. But the leaf was safe and sound. Everyone was finally relieved and jumped onto the boat. Su Yu boarded a leaf boat with the help of the sinful girl. Countless living beings steered the small boats and sailed toward the nine-color vortex. They were heading toward the legendary final destination of the great beginning realm, the nine-star civilization. Suyu sat on the leaf. He sighed. 200 years had passed, and he had finally reached the final step. He could not help but look back at the great beginning palace. But at a glance, he was surprised to find a chessboard was carved on the back of the great beginning palace. It was filled with stars. The black and white chess pieces displayed an incomparably vast pattern. A chessboard? Suyu recognized it immediately. That was the youth whom they had met twice, currently playing chess. Why was it carved in the hall of the Taichu Tao Lord? What was the relationship between the young man and the Taichu Taoist master? In the midst of bewilderment, the Taichu temple was getting further and further away. It's also getting more and more blurry. It was far away because the leaf boat was moving away from the Taichu temple. It was fuzzy because Suyu's consciousness could not bear it any longer and was about to sink into oblivion. He gritted his teeth and persevered until now. Finally, he could no longer endure it. His eyelids kept drooping. The sinful lady sensed Suyu's unusual state, so she kept calling out to him. However, Suyu had really tried his best. He used the last of his strength and said, "I tried my best." He was too tired. He had never been so tired in his life. His consciousness quickly sank into darkness. The sinful girl's shouts seemed to be isolated from him. In the darkness, Suyu heard a bone-chilling knocking sound. That would be a nightmare for Suyu. His surroundings gradually became clearer. He had once again returned to the sealed secret room. Not far away, a stone statue with its back facing him was relentlessly knocking on the stone wall, trying to knock it open. Suddenly, the statue stopped. She stood where she was, motionless. Suyu held his breath, but his heart could not help but beat wildly. Even with his temperament, he could not help but lie to himself that the statue could not see him. Roar! Suddenly, a ferocious female face appeared in front of Suyu. Her face was full of cracks, looking sinister and terrifying. With a mouth full of sharp teeth, she suddenly pounced on him. Suyu shuddered in fear. Before he could dodge, his neck was grabbed by a pair of powerful hands. Moreover, the grip was getting tighter and tighter. "Give me back my heart! Give me back my heart!" The stone statue screamed crazily, its face becoming more and more ferocious. Its hands were getting tighter and tighter, so you could barely breathe. He tried his best to pry open the stone statue's hands, but this place seemed to be the real world controlled by the stone statue. He could not use the power of the heavenly law master at all. He was like a mortal being pinched by the statue, unable to resist. In his ears, he heard the shrill shouts again and again, "Give me back my heart!" After roaring innumerable times, the stone statue suddenly lowered its head and stared at Suyu's heart. Its eyes were filled with shock. Then it pulled out a stone hand. The palm turned into a ghostly claw at a speed visible to the naked eye. Titter, its sharp fingers pierced into Suyu's chest, grabbing the heart of Prince Mirrorflower. "My heart! My heart!" Crash! With a pull of its palm, it dug out the bloody heart. Its face was filled with deep ecstasy. Suyu felt his body rapidly losing its life force, and it began to solidify into stone. On the other hand, the stone statue of Prince Mirrorflower, after obtaining the heart, its stone body began to recover its flesh and blood. Suyu saw this and remembered what Qing Yun had said. If Prince Mirrorflower were to be resurrected one day, it would be from the heart. Now, in the darkness, he was his own soul, and the stone statue of Prince Mirrorflower in front of him was her soul. His soul petrified was equivalent to death, and the petrified, dead soul of Prince Mirrorflower began to resurrect. If everything went according to plan, when he was completely petrified and the stone statue of Prince Mirrorflower turned into flesh and blood, she would be able to control Suyu's body. Suyu wanted to stop it, but there was no way to resist here. He could only watch as he slowly petrified, and Prince Mirrorflower gradually recovered into a beautiful woman of flesh and blood. She let go of Suyu and laughed up to the sky. "I'm finally resurrected. Finally resurrected." Prince Mirrorflower laughed up to the sky. I really want to thank you for hiding my heart in your body. If her heart was still that stone without entering the body of a living creature, how could she occupy the body and resurrect? Although the demon emperor had saved Suyu, he had inadvertently buried a great hidden danger that he did not know about: the release of Prince Mirrorflower. I will occupy your body now, find the other fragments, and completely resurrect. Prince Mirrorflower laughed. His body slowly dissipated into the darkness. Prince Mirrorflower's soul had already gone to control the body, so you could only look at his petrified body. Now, only a pair of eyes were left, still struggling to resist the petrification. The rest of his body had become a stone man. In the outside world, the sinful girl hugged Suyu, crying sadly. But suddenly, she seemed to sense something and immediately let go of Suyu's body and retreated far away. Who? Who are you? Her eyes were surging with fear. Chapter 2873. The corners of his mouth curled up into a sinister smile. Why doesn't the vessel know how to greet me when it sees me? The sinful lady trembled violently. However, it was not because of fear, but because of grief and indignation. Where is Suyu? What did you do to him? Jinghua Tianzi smiled. Suyu has disappeared from this world for eternity. He smiled. Suyu's body was engulfed in a layer of flames, which burned his male body into ashes. Amidst the raging flames, a brand new woman's body reappeared. It was the exact same body as the sinful girl, Xia Jingyu, and Qingyun. It was just that she was more graceful and beautiful. She was dressed in a luxurious dress and exuded a dignified aura. She was like the supreme goddess of Brahma, causing others to prostrate themselves in reverence. Looking at her long-lost body, Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince smiled. I'm finally back, but just a little bit more. Her current body was only formed from a portion of her heart. She still lacked 3 other parts of her body. Coincidentally, 2 of them were right in front of him. One of them was in Suyu's space storage device. The things that had once belonged to the sinful lady were taken out by Prince Xiaoyao's clone. Later on, when Prince Xiaoyao's clone was killed by Suyu, all of those things naturally fell into Suyu's hands. The other piece was in Qingyun's body. She only needed to move her hands, and she would be able to get it. Take it slow. There's no rush. Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince was excited. He prepared to take out one of the spatial storage devices. Then he took out Qingyun's. This place was above the abyss. How could Qingyun escape? Open. Jinghua Tianzi wiped Suyu's space storage device's seal with her finger. Then he opened it. With a sweep of his gaze, he immediately discovered the rock that was his body. He was about to take it out. Suddenly, Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince's eyes focused on an ancient bronze plate. She calmed herself down, thinking that she was seeing things. However, upon closer inspection, he realized that he wasn't mistaken. That's... She screamed and retracted her soul in fear. She saw something she absolutely did not want to see. The sinkhole of the sinkhole. In fact, he didn't even want his own body and just wanted his soul back. He decisively threw the entire spatial storage device into the abyss. He wanted to use the abyssal water to destroy the spatial storage device along with everything inside. However, he threw it halfway. The spatial storage device hovered in the air and froze. At the same time, a dazzling bronze light was released from the storage device. When the light shone on the sinful girl, she did not feel anything. However, when the light shone on Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince's body, thick green smoke came out of her body. Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince screamed in horror. No, I don't want to go back. Under the illumination of the bronze light, his soul quickly disappeared from his body. Then, he was forced back into the dark secret room. No, Mirrorflower Heaven's soul was unwilling to give up and tried to regain control of her body. However, the bronze light slammed down and suppressed Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's soul in the secret chamber. Under the effect of that power, his soul began to petrify once again. On the contrary, Suyu's petrified body started to recover. No. Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower struggled desperately. However, it was useless. She watched helplessly as she turned back into a stone man. As for Suyu, his flesh and blood had recovered. Suyu shook his head, not understanding what was going on in front of him. However, Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower was suppressed. How could he let go of this opportunity? He immediately snatched back the heart from Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's hand and inserted it into his body. He looked up at the bronze light. Suyu found that at the end of the light, there was a dazzling brightness. It seemed that by following the light, his consciousness could leave the dark secret chamber and return to the outside world. Immediately, he clumsily followed the bronze light and slowly crawled out. In the outside world, the sinful girl was still in shock. She stared blankly at Suyu's space storage device, which slowly fell on the chest of Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's body. It constantly released the bronze light, suppressing Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's soul. She did not dare to act rashly and could only temporarily protect it. At this time, countless leaves finally arrived at the nine-color vortex and entered it one after another. The sinful girl held her breath, tightly hugged Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's body, and passed through the nine-colored world. After a burst of heat, it seemed that there was a hot current passing through the surface of her body. When everything calmed down, she opened her eyes. What came into view was a beautiful scene that she had not seen for a long time. The sky was blue, and white clouds were leisurely. One after another, huge shattered stars hung in the sky. The spiritual energy of the 8-star civilization was 100 times more than that of the 8-star civilization. The precious demonic beasts and spiritual herbs of the 8-star civilization were everywhere like weeds. Is this the 9-star civilization? Someone couldn't help but cry. This was the 9-star civilization that they had dreamed of. It was so beautiful. Everything was the most beautiful thing in their dreams. The Demon Emperor couldn't help but be excited. Suddenly, he looked at the ground and found a pitch-black ancient tree. He said in surprise, 10,000 demon divine wood. This is something that has been extinct in the 8-star civilization. How can it grow here? The heaven-splitting ancestor followed his gaze and frowned. Demon Emperor, are you crazy with joy? That is obviously a fairy wood. The Demon Emperor pointed his finger and said angrily, You are crazy. I'm talking about this one. The heaven-splitting ancestor was surprised. I'm talking about this one. Huh? The Demon Emperor was stunned and said, Heaven-splitting, now is not the time to joke. The heaven-splitting ancestor said hurriedly, Am I kidding? I am looking at an ancient fairy wood. It is definitely not the 10,000 demon divine wood. They were all old monsters who had lived for countless years. They wouldn't make such a low-level mistake like recognizing something wrong. Gradually, they weren't the only ones who were confused. All of them. It was the same thing, but different people saw different things. Is this a situation unique to the 9-star civilization? The heaven-splitting ancestor was confused. The 8-star civilization had never had any records of the 9-star civilization. They didn't understand it at all. Even the books that Yun Yazi knew didn't have any records of it. However, he was certain. This is definitely not normal. We might not have come from the 9-star civilization. Not. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They had gone through so many hardships, but they weren't from the 9-star civilization. At this moment, a faint mocking voice floated down from the 9 heavens. I can tell you responsibly that you are from the 9-star civilization. Rumble, a golden light spread. Everyone's pupils constricted. A scene that made them feel despair appeared. 500 sacred mountains formed a line and slowly descended. They surrounded all of them, sacred mountains. The heaven-splitting ancestor felt his throat go dry. Chapter 2874. Why would the sacred mountain appear here? Moreover, they were already prepared to intercept them? Could it be that everything was a conspiracy? Within the sacred mountain, a golden light flashed, and a stone statue walked out. With a crown on his head, he looked down at the beings of nothingness and said, You must be very surprised that everyone sees a different 9-star civilization, right? I can answer you. The Demon Emperor and the others were very cautious. They did not believe that the sacred mountain would explain to them out of goodwill. However, they could not hold back their curiosity. Because you don't understand the nine-star civilization at all. The stone statue sighed. Don't understand? How could they not understand? The nine-star civilization was the only place that did not need to be repeatedly destroyed by the sacred mountain. It was prosperous, and nurtured countless powerful races. It was the holy land that the beings of nothingness dreamed of. All beings of any era desired to enter the nine-star civilization. They were no exception. As if reading their minds, the stone statue said hoarsely, "The nine-star civilization is no longer the nine-star civilization you imagined. Open your eyes and see everything clearly." At the same time, the sacred mountain released a blinding golden light. In the end, under the illumination, what was reflected in their eyes was actually a gloomy, dilapidated, dark, and decaying land. The blue sky, the white clouds, the beautiful stars, the peerless spirit herbs, all disappeared. The different worlds that everyone had seen had all dispersed. Their eyes finally saw the same scene, an oppressive and destroyed existence. This is the nine-star civilization. Even Yin Yazi could not believe it. This was the beautiful nine-star civilization in their hearts. Yes, the stone statue confirmed. Yin Yazi could not accept it and said, "Then what about the different worlds we saw just now?" He was suspicious. The stone statue said hoarsely, "What you saw was a scene from a different era here. Therefore, different people saw different scenes." This, the beings of nothingness could not understand. The stone statue said slowly, "Simply put, the space-time is distorted and the past eras are superimposed." Space-time distorted? The span of space-time was too terrifying. Why is this happening? They could not understand. The stone statue said, "Because the absolute beginning realm is about to collapse, and the space-time order is affected. That is why the situation of the past eras appeared today." What? The stone statue's words shocked everyone. The great beginning realm was going to be destroyed? They could believe the destruction of an 8-star civilization, but if the great beginning realm was destroyed, they couldn't believe it. Impossible. The absolute beginning realm has existed since ancient times. Why would it collapse? Yin Yazi asked. The stone statue chuckled and shook its head. There are too many secrets that none of you understand. There's no point in talking about it. The demon emperor's eyes flickered as he stared at him. Then who are you? No matter how one looked at it, the old man did not seem like an ordinary person. Me? The stone statue smiled. Let me introduce myself. I'm the clone of the first heavenly son. What? Heavenly son, or a clone of the first heavenly son? Among the sacred mountain heavenly sons, there were also differences in strength. For example, the one ranked last was the nine-tailed emperor. As for the first son of heaven, he was the most mysterious and terrifying of all the sons of heaven. It was said that he had never fought before. Even when the human ancestor attacked the sacred mountain back then, he did not make a move. The only record was that there had been internal strife between the heavenly sons. They fought each other. The last one was the first son of heaven. He single-handedly suppressed the other 9 emperors and prevented the emperors from killing each other. The depth of his strength was unfathomable. The stone elder in front of him was actually the first heavenly disciple's clone. Everyone had despair on their faces. His strength was probably not inferior to an heavenly son. How could they resist such an existence? If I wanted to destroy you, I would have done so long ago. Why would I wait until now? Xiongqi laughed hoarsely. Yun Yazi and the others were puzzled. Why did you kill us when we were at the 8-star civilization, but stop when we are at the 9-star civilization? Xiongqi said meaningfully, "You will understand very soon. All of you follow me." The demon emperor and the others were hesitant. How could they be willing to follow the sacred mountain that was their mortal enemy not long ago? Moreover, they did not believe that Xiongqi had any good intentions. After all, the battle between them had really happened. They had destroyed many sacred mountains and killed countless descendants of the heavenly sons. How could the hatred between them be resolved? There would definitely be danger on this trip. However, with Xiongqi in front of them, they had no choice. Yin Yazi's eyes flashed. He took out a small golden bookshelf. That was Yun Yazi's Tao artifact. He had never used it publicly. Its function was to turn a person into a book. It could turn a person into a book, hide in the bookshelf, and disappear from the world. With Qiongqi's power, no concealment method could be hidden. Only this Tao artifact could be tried. He secretly activated the Tao artifact. Two beams of golden light shot out from the bookshelf, enveloping Su Yu and the sinful girl at the same time. With a crash, the two of them turned into two books and fell to the ground. Then, he silently followed the others and left. Before leaving, he said to the black book that the sinful girl had turned into, "Take care of Su Yu." Qiongqi sensed something and turned to look at Yun Yazi. However, he did not find anything special and left. Two books, one black and one white, were left where they were. Yun Yazi and the others followed the sacred mountain and stepped into the gloomy sky. Soon, they left the sky and entered the depths of darkness. Looking down, Yun Yazi and the others were shocked to realize something. There was more than one civilization that they belonged to. Here, there were countless gloomy and dead civilizations, densely packed in the great beginning realm. How many 9-star civilizations are there in the world? Yun Yazi asked. Qiongqi did not even turn his head. There are as many 9-star civilizations as there are eras, but there is only one that is still prosperous. Yun Yazi and the others were greatly shocked. They could not come back to their senses for a long time. It turned out that there was more than one 9-star civilization that they dreamed of. There were countless of them. However, the rest had all become deadlands. Soon after, in the sky above the 9-star civilization that the sacred mountain had left, a group of people dressed in strange clothes appeared. They came to the place where the sacred mountain had descended and searched everywhere. The people of the sacred mountain have come to this abandoned 9-star civilization. There must be a huge conspiracy. A mysterious man in an animal skin coat said in a low voice. Check the surroundings carefully. We will definitely find something. However, no matter how they searched, they did not find anything special. They only picked up 2 books, one black and one white. Leader, there are 2 books. The mysterious man in animal skin frowned. Only 2 books. He opened it and frowned. Biography of Su Yu, biography of the sinful girl. If it was some kind of martial arts technique, it might be of some value. What was the point of 2 personal biographies? He was about to throw it away when the person beside him said, "Leader, doesn't Miss Wen Chung like to read? Isn't it good to give it to her?" After thinking about it, the mysterious man in animal skin smiled. That's true. Thus, he put the 2 books away. Chapter 2875. At the end of the dark absolute beginning realm. Among the countless abandoned 9-star civilizations, there was a bright and glorious civilization. Like a bright lamp in the dark night, it illuminated the world. It was a civilization shaped like a mountain. Its surface area was so large that it was the gathering place of 100 9-star civilizations. Moreover, it was a huge number of over 10,000 8-star civilizations. Rays of light radiated outwards. It showed that it was extremely prosperous. It was the only surviving 9-star civilization in the current era. It was a place where the experts of tens of thousands of races gathered. It was also the 9-star civilization in the hearts of Yun Yazi and the others. In a certain blessed land, immortal clouds curled up and beautiful flowers bloomed. Countless beautiful women walked back and forth. Among them, even the maids were beauties that were rarely seen in the outside world. As for those who were in high positions, they were even more so, stunningly beautiful. In a secret room, there was a woman as beautiful as a fairy in a painting who was in a deep meditative state. Suddenly, her left little finger trembled slightly. She was startled awake. Brother Su Yu has come to the 9-star civilization. In her eyes, scenes of the past flowed backward. Su Yu and the others passed through the vortex and entered the 9-star civilization. She was naturally Xia Jingyu. After so many years, the current Xia Jingyu was even more ethereal and beautiful. It was like a pearl blooming with a unique luster. She stood up excitedly and paced back and forth in the secret chamber, unable to express the joy in her heart. How is Brother Suyu now? Does he remember me? Was he still with Qin Sienna? Or is there someone else around? She kept muttering, her imagination running wild. As the saying goes, one feels shy when one is near home. It was the same for people close to him. After a long time, she finally calmed her restless heart and said, "Regardless of whether you remember me or not, my heart remains the same. Even if time and space changed and time shifted, her heart still lingered on the past." Under the pear blossom tree was a beautiful memory that she would never forget. "Where is she now?" Xia Jingyu murmured. He couldn't wait to see Suyu again. However, she resisted the urge to divine Suyu's future. She had used it once before, but it had been used by her own clansmen, who had almost killed Suyu. He could not let them know that Suyu had come to a 9-star civilization. Otherwise, they would try their best to kill him. Dong dong. Someone knocked on the door. Xia Jingyu immediately reined in her emotions, a trace of helplessness on her face. Look, his every move was under the control of some of his clansmen. Even his sudden awakening from meditation was clearly seen by them. She regained her composure and opened the stone door. A middle-aged woman with peerless charm stood outside the door. "Jingyu, did something happen to you?" she asked meaningfully. For a person to suddenly awaken from a deep meditative state, there was bound to be a major event that disturbed his state of mind. "It's just some problems with my training," Xia Jingyu replied calmly, not revealing any flaws. "I'm sorry to have caused you to worry." So, this person was the leader of the goddess tribe. "That's good." She nodded slowly. "Since you're awake, you should go out for a walk. There's a banquet at the border, and I've gotten an invitation for you." Xia Jingyu refused without hesitation. "Clan leader, I just want to cultivate now and quickly make up for my cultivation." Back then, when the sinful lady was hunting Suyu down, Xia Jingyu had sacrificed something of hers, causing her breakthrough to Tao Lord to be delayed. The progress of his cultivation had been greatly affected. The clan leader spoke with an amiable expression. "Balancing work and rest is the right way to go. Purposely cultivating will only make you worse. Listen to me and participate." Seeing that Xia Jingyu had no intention of agreeing, the clan leader's expression became serious. "Must I use my status as the clan leader to pressure you?" Xia Jingyu sighed helplessly. This junior understands. She was very reluctant to participate in these so-called banquets. These were usually social gatherings held by the young prodigies of powerful races. The clan leader hoped that she would go to these gatherings more often to attract some outstanding youths. This way, she would be able to find the most suitable husband for her. She rarely participated in such banquets. The clan leader probably felt impatient and began to use his authority to force her to participate. At the same time, in a certain abandoned civilization, unlike other civilizations that had fallen into complete darkness, most of this civilization was gloomy, but a small part of it was bright and resplendent. There was a gathering place of different races. They were a race that could not survive in the intense competition of the 9-star civilizations, so they migrated to the abandoned 9-star civilizations. In the abandoned 9-star civilizations, they found a place that they could barely survive in. Then they established their territory. There were many similar races. This was just one of them. They were called wanderers by the 9-star civilizations. In other words, they were people who wandered at the edge of the world. In a civilization, in a certain dilapidated city, in a remote corner, the group that had gone out to hunt had returned to the mansion in the city. In the backyard of the mansion, a young girl with a delicate face was holding an old book, reading it with great interest. Her eyesight was very poor, and she could only see the words clearly when she got very close. "Miss, Marquis Wolf Officer is here. Master is receiving him in the side hall." A maid whispered in her ear. Wen Sheng put down the book and immediately frowned. "Why are you mentioning him to me? What a bummer." The maid said helplessly, "Master wants Miss to go over." "I'm not going. I want to read." Wen Sheng seemed to loathe the middle-aged man and turned to return to her room. The maid could only go back to report. At the moment, Marquis Wolf Officer was in the side hall, chatting happily with Wen Sheng's father. "We went out to hunt this time and found a large amount of resources in many abandoned civilizations. A conservative estimate is that it could be used by Wenyuan City for 10 years. Marquis Wolf Officer said seriously. Only 10 years? Wen Cheng's father was the city lord of Wenyuan City. He silently sighed in his heart, feeling very worried. The abandoned civilization they were in did not have spirit energy and could not produce any resources. The reason it could be maintained now was because the various factions of the civilization were constantly searching for resources from the abandoned civilizations to supply the small civilizations they created. Marquis Wolf Officer was a capable general of Wenyuan City. His strength was second only to the city lord, and he was extremely skilled in searching for resources. However, the resources of the abandoned civilizations were limited. After many years of searching, all the resources that could be found nearby had long been found. This time, Marquis Wolf Officer had gone out for 5 years and had only found 10 years' worth of resources. This meant that he had to immediately go out and search to maintain the prosperity of Wenyuan City. The situation is extremely unfavorable. Marquis Wolf Officer sighed heavily. The situation of the other cities is similar or even worse. City Lord Wenyuan nodded. How could he not know this? The other cities had already sent people to even further abandoned civilizations to search for resources. Marquis Wolf Officer requested, I want to leave in 2 months and go to an even more distant abandoned civilization. City Lord Wenyuan relaxed inwardly. He was still thinking about how to speak. Chapter 2876. Marriage? City Lord Wenyuan's heart thumped. A look of deep hesitation flashed across his face. Marquis Wolf Officer was his most capable general. Many cities wanted to poach it away. In order to win him over, City Lord Wenyuan naturally did everything he could. But among these abandoned cities, Wenyuan City was one of the weaker ones. What he could afford, other cities could offer double or even 10 times more. The reason why Marquis Wolf Officer hadn't been poached away was because of the Wolf Officer. It was because he had taken a fancy to Wenyuan City Lord's daughter. Because of her, he was willing to stay. Of course, he didn't stay for nothing. Instead, he asked to be engaged to his daughter. In truth, City Lord Wenyuan was extremely unwilling. Marquis Wolf Officer was about the same age as him, so he could definitely be Wen Cheng's father. How could City Lord Wenyuan be willing to marry his daughter? Unfortunately, Profound Literature City needed Marquis Wolf Officer. Thus, City Lord Wenyuan agreed against his will. All these years, Marquis Wolf Officer had been urging her to get married. However, he had always been thinking of ways to evade it, hoping that this day would come later. It is still too early to talk about marriage, City Lord Wenyuan said. Let Wenchun grow up a bit more. Marquis Wolf Officer frowned, took out a secret letter, and placed it on the table. This is, City Lord Wenyuan said thoughtfully. Marquis Wolf Officer said indifferently. City Lord will know once you take a look. City Lord Wenyuan had a bad premonition. His master tore apart Xinjian. After reading the contents of the letter, Zhang Xian was infuriated. The letter was a recruitment letter that the first city's governor had handed to Marquis Wolf Officer. The recruitment condition was to betroth his daughter to the Marquis of Wolf County. As long as Marquis Lang Guan was willing to join them, he could immediately marry his daughter. Marquis Lang Guan raised his teacup and said indifferently, Although I am deeply in love with Miss Wencheng, there is a limit to a person's patience. If the city lord has no intention of marrying Miss Wencheng to me, then I have no reason to reject his good intentions. Hearing this, City Lord Wenyuan's heart tightened. After some thought, he said, I would like to ask Wencheng's opinion on this matter. How about it? He had no other choice. He could only agree. But before he agreed, he had to first ask for Wencheng's opinion. Then hurry up. I must marry Wencheng within a month, otherwise. Marquis Wolf Officer didn't continue, but the meaning was clear. He could no longer risk his life for a woman with no future in sight and for Profound Literature City. I understand. City Lord Wenyuan stood up and went to find Wencheng to have a heart-to-heart talk. Wait. Marquis Wolf Officer suddenly remembered and took out 2 books, one black and one white, from his bosom. This time I found 2 books. Give them to Wencheng. City Lord Wenyuan nodded. Wencheng liked to read, books the most. But what the broken civilization lacked the most was books. Wen Cheng should like these two books. He arrived at the backyard. City Lord Wen Yuan knocked on the door. Wen Cheng opened the door. "It's me. Father wants to talk to you." "Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it." Wen Cheng's coquettish voice came from inside. "Father doesn't love me anyway." City Lord Wen Yuan felt guilty. He felt a stabbing pain in his heart. If there was a choice, who would be willing to give their daughter to an old man to defile? But he had no other choice. Hearing this, he silently put down the two books. With his hands clasped behind his back, he left in loneliness. After a long time of silence, Wen Cheng opened the door. Seeing the lonely back view of her father walking with his head lowered, she could not help but bite her lips, her eyes filled with self-blame. "I knew that father had to work very hard to maintain the city. So why did I have to be unreasonable?" She suddenly saw the two books on the ground. She could not help but pick them up. Biography of Su Yu, Biography of the Sinful Girl? Her attention was once again attracted by these two books. Su Yu, Sinful Girl? Who is it? I've never even heard of it. Yet you have the cheek to write a biography? Wen Cheng wrinkled her cute nose. She casually threw the two books away. But before she threw them away, she could not bear to. "Sigh, I haven't seen a new book in a long time. Forget it. I'm just reading to pass the time," Wen Cheng muttered to herself. She brought the two books back into the house and placed them on the study table. "The white one, the black one, which one should I read first?" Wen Cheng raised her eyebrows. Finally, she chose to open the white one. Biography of Su Yu. Let's see what you did in your life to have the cheek to write a biography. Wen Cheng flipped it open, casually looking through it. But with one look, she could not help but be attracted. Xinwei Island? What is that place? There are mountains, water, and even the sky. It looks very beautiful. How could this Su Yu be so foolish? In order to save his father-in-law, he actually went to the imperial capital alone to participate in some competition. Xia Jingyu is really beautiful and kind, but Qin Xianer is cute and loyal. Who should Su Yu choose? How could this Su Yu be so fickle? He actually flirted between the two of them. Sigh. In the end, he still chose Qin Xianer. Xia Jingyu is so pitiful. Sob, sob, sob. Xianer actually died. And so many good girls all dead. As she read on, she could not help but shed tears. She was deeply immersed in the ups and downs of the story. Reading the biography, it was like experiencing Su Yu's happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. When she stopped crying, she realized that it was already dawn. One look, and she realized that it had been an entire night. She forgot to eat and sleep, continuing to read. But when she flipped to the next page, it was gone. Why is it gone? Wen Cheng opened her eyes wide, angrily slamming the table. Damn it! I was at the most exciting moment. Why is it gone? She had been excited, but there was no more. Damn it! Who wrote this book? Don't let me know, or I will definitely send you a kitchen knife. Wen Cheng was furious. Then, she looked at the last black book. With a thought, he said, "These two books should be related, right?" She immediately flipped open the black book, but to her disappointment, there was no connection between the two. This book described the life of the sinful woman. So boring. This woman called Sinful Woman. Does she only know how to cultivate? No love. Only a teacher called Yun Yazi. So boring. She closed the book, once again flipping through the white book. She could not help but want to read it again, to review the details that she had missed. Who knew? Just as she was about to open it, the book actually burst into flames. It's on fire. Wen Cheng immediately used her body to try and extinguish the flames. It was obvious how much she cherished the book. She actually used her body to suppress the fire. But the flames still mercilessly burned the white book into ashes. Wen Cheng looked at the ashes on the table, her eyes brimming with tears. My book, my Su Yu's biography. But she continued to cry and cry. The ashes were blown by the wind, actually condensing into a human figure in midair. Then it transformed into a clear woman. The woman's features were like a painting, her beauty out of this world, as if she had walked out of a painting. As a woman, Wen Cheng could not help but be captivated by her stunning appearance. But then, she suddenly became frightened, her eyes wide. A person ran out from the book? Chapter 2877. And a great beauty, Wen Cheng said in shock. Her exclamation attracted the attention of the guards outside, who asked hurriedly, Miss Wen Cheng, what is it? Wen Cheng said hurriedly, yes. She suddenly realized that if she told anyone, this woman would definitely be taken away. Moreover, such a beautiful woman would not have a good ending in this broken civilization. Wen Cheng quickly corrected herself. There is a cockroach, a very, very big cockroach. The guards outside the door twitched their mouths. They were already used to Miss Wen Cheng's nervousness. Do you need us to come in? No. I can trample it to death myself, Wen Cheng said hurriedly. The guards nodded and silently stood guard. Wen Cheng heaved a sigh of relief and looked at the sleeping woman again. The more she looked, the more stunned she became. She is so beautiful. How can there be such a beautiful person in this world? But she couldn't help but think, but how did she come out of the book? After thinking for a while, she suddenly had an idea. That's right. Could she be the legendary Yanruyu? She remembered reading an old saying in a book. There's a golden house in the book, and there's a beauty in the book. Such a beautiful woman was much more beautiful than Yanruyu. But I am a woman. Why would I want Yanruyu? Wen Cheng was a little discouraged. Why didn't the one who came out be a handsome man like Panin? As they were talking, the sleeping woman's eyelids suddenly moved. Wen Cheng was shocked and quickly retreated to the bookshelf, vigilant and careful. After a while, the sleeping woman finally opened her eyes, which were full of confusion. It was Su Yu's soul that had woken up. The soul of Jinghua Tianzi had been suppressed by the ultimate ruined divine steel, so he had the opportunity to follow the light of the ultimate ruined divine steel and leave the dark secret room. He had once again occupied his body. Looking at the unfamiliar scene in front of him, Su Yu was a little confused. Where's this place? If he remembered correctly, he should have fallen into a coma on the way to the abyss. Moreover, what was going on with his body? Why did he feel like something was wrong? Could it be that Jinghua Tianzi had controlled his body, so his soul and body were not in harmony? After a while, he slowly regained control of his body and could barely move his fingers. He sat up. Why does my chest feel so heavy? Su Yu asked as he sat up. He immediately noticed that something was wrong with his body. Lowering his head to take a look, he could not help but be stunned. These two lumps, what are they? He stretched out his hand and subconsciously pinched them. He felt an amazing elasticity and softness. Su Yu froze on the spot, his face turning green. He immediately examined his body. Fair, slender fingers, flawless, snow-white skin, delicate muscles, and a slender waist. And the two ripe, plump lumps on his chest. How did I become a woman? Su Yu felt like he had just been struck by lightning, and his mind was buzzing. He could not accept this absurd reality. I must be dreaming. Su Yu pinched his chest once again. A sense of reality told Su Yu that this was not a dream. Moreover, in his mind, a weak but angry voice sounded faintly. Filthy ant, don't touch my body. Su Yu shuddered. It was Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower. Although her soul was suppressed, because she had successfully escaped once, it was no longer completely sealed. She could still transmit a trace of soul energy into Su Yu's mind. He finally understood what was going on. This body belonged to Mirage Flower Heaven. He could not help but be angry. Where's my body? It's gone. Mirage Flower Heaven snorted coldly. Su Yu's face was extremely gloomy. That body was a new corpse that he had occupied after leaving the Tao Tai's cage and had been constantly refining it. It was already Su Yu's own real body. He did not expect that it would be destroyed by Mirage Flower Heaven. Moreover, on this basis, it had reformed into a female body. He carefully felt it and found that whether it was the physique of the holy mortal body, the bloodline of the 8 great masters, or other aspects, Mirage Flower Heaven had perfectly inherited it. It was no different from the previous body, and even the cultivation was preserved. Only the gender had changed. Bastard. Su Yu's face was as ugly as it could be. Mirage Flower Heaven warned, "Don't touch my body, or I will." She did not continue but screamed wildly, "Ah, I will kill you." because Suyu held the two ripe lumps on his chest and rubbed them hard. So what if I touch them? Fine. You wait and see. You will pay the price for sullying my holy body, Mirage Flower Heaven said angrily. Then, she shut her mouth completely and did not say a word. She was just waiting for the right time to get out again. Suyu snorted, thinking about how to change his body back. I didn't expect you to be so beautiful. A dazed voice came. When Suyu raised his head and looked over, he discovered that it was a pretty young girl who was staring at him in shock. Someone is here? Suyu immediately put down his hands in front of his chest and said awkwardly, Miss, don't get me wrong. Actually, I am. You don't have to say it, understand? When Chung interrupted him, hugging her chest with her arms and shrinking back. You know nothing. The blue veins on Suyu's forehead were throbbing. Where is this? Why am I here? Suyu asked when he saw that the girl did not mean to be hostile. When Chung muttered, This is my room. As for why you are here, I want to ask you, how did you get out of the book? Book? Suyu was stunned. What book? When Chung pointed at the other black book. After I finished reading the biography of Suyu, you ran out of it. Speaking of which, who are you? Suyu said, I am Su. I don't have a name. Now that he was in a woman's body, it was hard to believe that he could say a man's name. I know. Your name is Su Ryu, right? When Chung asked. Suyu had an embarrassed look on his face. This body is really troublesome. Can you leave me alone for a while? Suyu asked. He wanted to do a thorough examination of his body. Wenqing nodded. Sure, I will help you change your clothes. Suyu's clothes were very luxurious. But because of this, he had to change his clothes. Otherwise, he would be easily targeted. After when Chung left, Suyu checked his body immediately. Suyu immediately examined his body. As he pondered, he tried to use the 8 great domains to rebuild his body. However, what made his face turn ugly was that this body, which had been modified by Mirage Flower Heaven, was completely immune to the 8 great realms. It did not work at all. Damn it. He slammed his palm on the table. Unexpectedly, before he slammed it down, a terrifying power surged in his palm. A single slap was enough to destroy the entire broken civilization. Chapter 2878. He stared at his palm in disbelief. This is the power of Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's body. Then he shook his head. If it was Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's true body, its power wouldn't be limited to this. Thinking about it, he vaguely understood that this body was probably formed from the Stonebirth heart. It was only a quarter of Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's size. If the other 3 parts of his body were to successfully fuse together, the might of his palm strike would probably be 10 or even 100 times stronger. Is this the only benefit? Suyu laughed bitterly. Given how powerful Heavenly Empress Mirrorflower's body was, even a peak mid-stage Tao Lord would have to retreat in front of her. But I must get my body back. Suyu wasn't interested in maintaining a woman's dignity. Otherwise, how beautiful would it be when he met Xia Jingyu, Qin Xian'er, and Su Kai'er in the future? Before that, it was better to figure out the situation first. Where was this place? Why weren't Yin Yazi and the others around him? Also, before he fainted, Sinful Girl had been by his side. Where was she now? Suddenly, Suyu looked at the black book on the desk. The girl said that he came out of a white book. In that case, did this black book contain some other secret? He flipped open the black book, and the 3 words, The Legend of the Sinful Woman, came into view. The Legend of the Sinful Woman? Suyu was startled, and he curiously opened it. In the end, he saw the life of the sinful woman. When Chung might have felt bored just by watching, but Suyu could see the stubbornness of the sinful lady's pursuit of the pinnacle of the martial path in her early stages. To be able to continuously pursue one's own peak in the incomparably dull years. In the end, she mercilessly killed Yun Yazi and snatched the heaven sun gazing at air. After reading it, Suyu let out a long sigh. The past was like smoke. Now, the sinful girl had been reborn from the ashes and obtained a new life. As soon as he finished reading, the black book burst into flames and turned into ashes. The ashes once again condensed into a beautiful figure. It was the sinful woman in black. She looked around blankly. When he saw that Suyu was close to him, he took out the sinful sword without hesitation and thrust it at Suyu. Suyu pinched the sinful sword between his 2 fingers and said hurriedly, "It's me." The sinful girl was startled and asked with uncertainty, "Who are you?" "I am Suyu. The soul of heavenly Prince Mirrorflower has been suppressed by me again," Suyu said. However, the sinful girl did not believe it. How powerful was Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince's soul? How could she be suppressed by Suyu? However, when she recalled how Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower fainted again after taking out the bronze plate, she began to believe it. "What happened between us?" the sinful woman probed. Suyu blinked his eyes and said, "Me and you? Yes, you chased after me, and then you kissed me." The sinful girl was still doubtful when she said that. There were many people who knew that she had tried to kill Suyu. However, only a few people knew that she had kissed Suyu. "Is it really you?" The sinful lady stepped forward in surprise, and she wanted to support Suyu. However, when she looked at his feminine body, she hesitated and said, "Your body," Suyu was helpless. "Don't mention it. My body has been modified by Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower, so I won't be able to return to normal in a short time." "Are you going to use a woman's body to travel around the 9-star civilizations in the future?" The sinful lady looked at Suyu, who looked exactly like her, and felt a little awkward. Suyu spread his hands. "What can I do? By the way, where are my master and the others?" Only now did the evil girl remember. She told him everything that had happened. What? The great beginning realm is going to collapse? Suyu was shocked. The 9-star civilization that he had been looking forward to for a long time turned out to be an ancient wasteland. It was beyond his expectations. "That Xiongqi must be up to no good," Suyu said with certainty. The 8-star civilizations and the Holy Mountain were fighting to the death. How could they reconcile so quickly? "I must find them as soon as possible," Suyu said to himself. Before that, he needed to find a way to restore his body. It was really inconvenient to wear a woman's body. "If you want to restore your body, I think you could try to find the Palace of Heaven," the sinful lady said. Speaking of which, the sinful lady used to be a member of the Palace of Heaven. The Palace of Heaven used to set up a sub-palace in our 8-star civilization, and I was a member of the sub-palace. I used to hear that there was an yin-yang gate in the main hall of the Great Beginning Realm that had existed since the beginning of the Great Beginning Realm. If you use it properly, you can change your gender. You can give it a try." So he was relieved. He finally had a target to look for. He was afraid that there was no way to find his body. "My soul and body have not completely merged yet. I will hide in this civilization for the time being. I will act only after I have fully recovered." The sinful lady agreed. The dangers of the 9-star civilizations are unpredictable. It will be difficult for you to act before you have fully recovered. After a pause, the sinful lady said, "Especially since you have become so beautiful. I am very worried about your personal safety." The sinful lady, who had always been cold and emotionless, had learned to tease others. The corners of Suyu's mouth twitched. He could not help but shudder at the thought that he might be targeted by a group of lecherous people. He immediately took out a black cloak and covered his entire body so tightly that even his age could not be distinguished. "Suryu, can I come in?" When Cheng asked. Suyu looked at the sinful lady, gave her a look, and opened the small nightmare crossing lotus. The latter entered immediately. The appearance of 2 identical people was more or less troublesome. "Come in," Suyu said expressionlessly as he put away the nightmare crossing lotus. When Cheng came in again, when she saw Suyu in a black robe, her eyes lit up. You're not stupid. You know how to cover yourself." Suyu looked at her and said, "I will stay in your room. Don't tell anyone. You will provide me with whatever I need." When Cheng put her hands on her waist and said angrily, "Hey, I am not your servant," Suyu said calmly. "In exchange, I can cure your eyes." He could tell that this woman's eyes were born with a defect. Treatments after birth would not work. "Cure my eyes? Forget it." The girl waved her hand, looking indifferent. "All these years, Father has found many resources for me, but they are useless." As she spoke, Suyu shot a beam of colorful light in her left eye. It was the life domain, which meant rebirth. The girl did not feel any pain. She only felt her vision blur. Suddenly, the things in her left eye became extremely clear. Ah! The girl screamed and jumped up from the chair. She placed her palm in front of her eyes and waved it back and forth. My left eye, my left eye. Suyu said calmly. Do you want to cure your other eye as well? Yes. Of course I do. All right, then do as I say. Okay. Okay, wait. But if you stay in my room, where will I stay? When Chung said, startled. She could not possibly move out, right? If that was the case, anyone would have to enter the room to take a look. You can sleep on the floor, Suyu said nonchalantly. I'll sleep on the floor? When Chung pointed at her own nose. This was her room. After thinking for a moment, Wen Chung said, forget it. Let's sleep together. She paused, then hugged her chest and warned, let's make this clear. I don't care if you rub your own, but don't rub mine. Chapter 2879. The veins on Suyu's forehead throbbed. She really thought of herself as someone with a special fetish. You don't even want to rub it. He glanced at her slightly protruding breasts, completely uninterested. Wen Chung clenched her fists, stupidly saying, I don't know why, but I really want to hit someone. Suyu was expressionless, immediately sitting cross-legged, beginning to adapt to the body of Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower. Wen Chung cooperated, concealing her existence. A few days later, that night, while Suyu was still getting used to it, a knock came from the door. Wen Chung, can you let my father in? Wen Chung was shocked, hurriedly saying, I'm already asleep. City Master Wen Yuan, who was outside, was shocked. So early? All right, I'll come back tomorrow. Wen Xing knew what her father wanted to say. After a moment of silence, she said, let's talk in the garden. She opened the door and entered the garden with her father. In the past few days, Wen Chung had convinced herself to listen to her father's arrangements. Wen Yuan opened his mouth, but did not know where to start. Father, you want to rush me to marry Marquis Wolf? Wen Chung said, her eyes dim. Father can arrange it however you want. I have no objections. City Master Wen Yuan felt a stabbing pain in his heart. The more obedient his daughter was, the more pain he felt. But for the development of Wen Yuan City, what other choice did he have? Wen Chung, I have let you down, Wen Yuan said, lowering his head. Wen Chung silently sighed. Father gave birth to me and raised me. It is only right for a daughter to repay the favor. City Master Wen Yuan felt even more ashamed. Even though Marquis Wolf is old, his feelings for you are sincere. You might be lucky to marry him. Sincere? Father, do you think I don't understand the outside world because I read all day? Wen Chung was a little disappointed at her father's deception. Everyone outside knows that Marquis Wolf is lustful. He has defiled at least 800 women, if not 1,000. He is merely interested in my looks and status, and wants to take them for himself. Wen Cheng's words rendered City Lord Wen Yuan speechless. To think that his daughter, who had never left the house, knew so much about the rumors of the outside world. Forget it, you arrange it. I accept my fate. Wen Chung silently returned to the house. Although Suyu was fusing with the souls, he was still very sensitive to the outside world. Is something bothering you? No. Wen Cheng's face was taut. He paused for a moment and said, How much longer do you need to leave? I may not be able to protect you for long. About half a month. Wen Cheng nodded. That's more like it. Tell me what you need now. I'll try my best to find it for you while I'm still here. So you stopped fusing with the body and wrote a list on the spot. Most of them were materials that could facilitate the fusion of souls. They weren't rare materials. After Wen Chung saw it, he frowned. They're all rare and hard to find. I need to go to the city to take a look. Although she could let the servants do it for her, it would definitely attract her father's attention. Therefore, he could only do it himself. Scarce. So he was surprised. This dilapidated civilization was really desolate. Something that could be easily found in an 8-star civilization was so difficult to find in this abandoned 9-star civilization. I will go with you, Suyu said worriedly. He was a little concerned about what Wen Chung meant by saying that he was going to leave soon. All right, it's good to come out and get some fresh air. But don't let anyone find out that you came out from my room. Otherwise, my innocence will be gone, Wencheng muttered. Suyu clenched his fists. Little girl, you're asking for a beating. Wencheng stuck out her tongue and giggled. Because they had a common secret, Wencheng was only open to Suyu. The two of them left the city master's manor in a flash while no one was around. Walking in the city, Suyu kept shaking his head as he looked around. It was too dilapidated. There wasn't even a proper shop. It was filled with small stalls and hawkers. Is there such a lack of resources? Suyu and Wencheng searched for half a day and only found 30% of what they needed. Wencheng said helplessly, "It's just so lacking." There was still 70% of what they had yet to find. Sister Ryu, are these things very important to you? Wencheng asked. Suyu nodded. Yes, very important. It's my most important matter. Hearing that it was so serious, Wencheng had no choice but to say, all right, there's a branch of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce in the biggest city of this dilapidated civilization. What? Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce? There was a Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce in such a place? How long has the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce existed? Suyu asked. Wencheng shook her head. A very, very long time. I heard they are everywhere. If that was the case, the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce of the 8-star civilizations was only the tip of the iceberg of the true Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. The power of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce was a little terrifying. In comparison, Nirvana was limited by the 8-star civilizations and could only compete with one of them. When it came to the 9-star civilizations, they couldn't be compared at all. However, if it was the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce, finding what he wanted couldn't be easier. Lead the way. Wencheng hesitated. But I heard that the things in the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce are very expensive. Because of the scarcity of resources, the prices of the things there were at least 3 times the normal price. If it wasn't for the fact that they had no other choice, no one would come to buy them. I have money, Suyu said indifferently. Wencheng muttered, I can see that with such a beautiful face, there must be a lot of men giving her money. Hey, to be honest, Suyu really wanted to beat someone up. If you talk nonsense again, do you believe that I will change your eyes back? Suyu said impatiently. Wencheng hurriedly covered his mouth and kept shaking his head, meaning that he wouldn't dare. The first city was called Faraway Sight City. Compared to Wenyuan City, it was more than 2 or 3 times larger, and it was bustling with people. It barely resembled an ordinary city of an 8-star civilization. One of the magnificent pavilions rose from the ground, and it was even more luxurious than the city master's manor in the city. That is the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. You need to pay a deposit of at least 1,000,000 Tao coins to enter. Wencheng pointed over and said. As she spoke, she suddenly fell silent. Suyu glanced sideways and saw that Wencheng was staring blankly at a brothel with bright lights beside her. A drunken middle-aged man was lustfully hugging 2 young and beautiful women, stumbling toward it and not far away. She clenched her fists, unable to suppress the indignation in her expression. But in the end, she loosened her fists, her eyes filled with helplessness. Let's go. Wencheng held on to Suyu's arm and leaned against him, looking very helpless. Suyu stared at the man. Is that your uncle? Wencheng bit her red lips, too embarrassed to respond. Seeing that she was unwilling to speak, Suyu did not pursue the matter further, walking alongside her. Wencheng. But the middle-aged man noticed Wencheng. He immediately shook off the 2 women and rushed over, surprised. Why did you come here? He was Marquis Langguan. In his memory, Wencheng was rarely willing to leave the house. Wencheng tilted her head, not wanting to look at him. Her tone was stiff. Why do I need you to care? Marquis Langguan creased his brows. How can you speak to your fiancée like that? Do you have any upbringing? He had been caught playing with women outside. Not only did he not feel guilty, he was blaming his fiancée for not having upbringing. Marquis Langguan stared at Wencheng's arm. Seeing that she was tightly holding on to Suyu, who was dressed in a black robe, he could not even tell if he was a man or a woman. His brows creased even deeper. Who are you? A man or a woman? Wencheng's expression did not change. Since Suyu was a woman, she did not feel guilty at all. Chapter 2880. Of course I am a man. Suyu imitated his original deep male voice. Then, he extended his arm and hugged Wen Cheng's shoulder. Coincidentally, his palm landed on her chest, but he did not touch her. Wen Cheng's body stiffened as he jumped in fright. If not for feeling the soft female body beneath the black robe, she would have thought that the person beside her was a man. Wen Cheng, don't you have any shame? Marquis Wolf's face turned green. He was curious as to why the usually reclusive Wen Cheng would suddenly come to such a faraway place, with a mysterious person by her side. So, she was fooling around with a man. Shameless be asterisk starred. Marquis Wolf pointed at his nose and scolded. You are not married yet, but you are already in cahoots with another man. Wen Cheng was trembling with anger. She was not married yet, but was being insulted by Marquis Wolf in public. Furthermore, was the shameless one not Marquis Wolf? They were about to get married, but she was still fooling around in a brothel. In her anger, she grabbed Suyu's palm, pressing it against her newly developed chest, rubbing it forcefully. She glared at Marquis Wolf provocatively. Yes, so what? This time, even Suyu himself was shocked. He had wanted to take revenge on Wen Cheng for speaking without thinking. Who knew that this last would? He hurriedly retracted his hand, but Wen Cheng pressed it down tightly. She glared at Suyu, sending a message fiercely. You started it. You have to continue acting. Feeling the softness of his palm, Suyu had an unnatural expression, replying, But weren't you disgusted? Wen Cheng said, You are a woman, not a man. What does it matter if I touch you? As long as you don't let your thoughts run wild. Suyu looked at his nose looked at his mouth, and his mouth looked at his heart. As a man, how could he not let his thoughts run wild? You, Marquis Wolf was furious, raising his palm to give Wen Cheng a slap. But no matter what, Wen Cheng was Master Wen Yuan's woman. They were not married yet, so he could not hit her. His palm turned, aiming for Suyu. You shameless thing, Scram. Suyu was expressionless, lightly lifting his hand. He did not even use any force. Ouch! Marquis Wolf officer immediately cried out in pain and covered his palm that was about to break. He didn't dare believe it. He was in existence at the peak of the Tao Lord realm. A single palm strike was enough to cause mountains to collapse and the earth to crack. However, when he struck the back of this person's hand, the other party did not move at all. Instead, his own hand was nearly broken. Could he be a master of the heavenly law? Marquis Wolf officer's heart jumped, but he shook his head. If he really had the cultivation of a master of the heavenly law, why would he need to stay in a broken civilization? They would have gone to the prosperous 9-star civilization a long time ago. Even if he stayed in a broken civilization, he would at least be the lord of the city. Therefore, he speculated that this person must have some kind of defensive treasure on the back of his hand. Stinking brat, get out of my way. Marquis Wolf officer pointed at himself. Do you know who I am? You'll be scared to death if I tell you. Suyu said indifferently. Oh, so your name is scaring you to death. This name can really scare people to death. Puff! Wen Cheng was stunned for a moment. When he understood, he immediately burst out laughing. You? Marquis Wolf officer was about to attack. Suyu waved his hand in boredom. Well, I'm in a bad mood. Get lost. He was too lazy to bother with such a small fry. As he spoke, he put his arm around Wen Cheng's shoulder and left. Marquis Wolf officer clenched his teeth. Which man could tolerate his woman being taken away by another man in front of him? Stop right there. Marquis Wolf officer tried to chase after him, but Suyu only took a light step forward and disappeared from his original spot. Marquis Wolf officer looked left and right, but he could not see a shadow at all. Wen Cheng, come out. Marquis Wolf officer shouted loudly, looking around anxiously. Suyu and Wen Cheng had already arrived in front of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. He let go of his hand and said, Next time, don't think of using me. But Wen Cheng did not hear him at all. She continued to ask, Why is your physique so strong? Why are your movement techniques so strong? Why did your voice change to that of man? Why? Suyu extended a palm and covered her small mouth, which was chattering incessantly. He said, Little girl, curiosity killed the cat. Wen Cheng's heart was filled with surprise and curiosity. She suddenly felt that Su Ruyu was much more mysterious than she had imagined. Hey, tell me. I'll let you rub my chest. Her small mouth was covered, but she still refused to give up. She said indistinctly, no, then 2 times. 3 times is fine too. Still no? Then 1 night will do, right? The veins on Su Yu's forehead throbbed continuously, and he closed his eyes fiercely. He had an urge to strangle this little girl to death. A very strong urge. Let's buy enough materials first. Su Yu tossed her aside and entered alone. He had just entered when a guard smiled. This, sir, please pay a deposit of $1 million before entering. When you leave, you will naturally return it. Wen Chung followed him, shyly hugging Su Yu's arm. She had never been to such a luxurious place even once. Sir, if there are 2 of you, it will cost $2 million, the guard said with a smile. Wen Chung immediately took out her storage bag and rummaged through it. With great difficulty, she found a few old and small cards. The guard still had a smile on his face, but his eyes were filled with disdain. How dare she come to the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce with such a small amount of money? She probably couldn't even afford the cheapest items. Take it, no need to keep the change. Unexpectedly, Su Yu casually took out a card with a $5 million limit and threw it to the guard. The guard's eyes flashed, and he hurriedly said, Sir, please come in. Wenxing opened her mouth wide. 5 million. Broken civilizations that lacked resources rarely had cards with large limits. Usually, they only had cards with small limits. Su Yu casually grabbed it. It was a huge card. Where did you get so much money? Wen Chung chased after him and asked in surprise. Su Yu turned a deaf ear to her. He walked to the various counters, looking for what he wanted. With the wealth of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce, they indeed had everything. Soon, he had gathered all the items he needed. All right, let's go home, Su Yu said. There was nothing else to see here. But he did not get a response from Wen Chung. He turned his head and saw that Wen Chung was leaning on a counter. Her eyes were wide open, and she blinked as she looked at the exquisite jewelry on the counter. Those were all doctrine artifacts with various functions. Wen Chung liked them at first glance, but they were all very beautiful. She did not know which one to choose. How much is this hairpin? Wen Chung asked unconfidently. The counter manager was expressionless. 3 million Tao coins. 3 million? Wen Chung was speechless, and she immediately dismissed the idea of buying it. It was too expensive, and she could not afford it. Su Yu saw that and walked over. He pointed at the hairpin and said, This. Before he finished speaking, a figure rushed over in a hurry and slammed 3 million Tao coins on the table. I'll buy this. Chapter 2881. As he spoke, he looked at Su Yu with a provocative gaze. He naturally asked along the way, and finally found Marquis Wolf County. The shopkeeper was smiling widely. Out of duty, he asked patiently, Do you want to confirm the purchase? 3 million Tao coins was not a small sum, so he had to confirm it. Marquis Wolf County felt his heartache. 3 million Tao coins was money he had worked hard to earn for a year, but now it was used to buy a useless hairpin. All right, esteemed customer. The shopkeeper smiled and accepted the money. Marquis Wolf County pulled Wen Chung over, glaring at Su Yu with hostility. My woman does not need you to buy anything. Moreover, can you afford it? How many men in the broken civilization would be willing to spend a fortune to buy a hairpin for the woman they loved? He looked at Wen Chung again. You are still young. Don't be deceived by men's flowery words. Whether a man is sincere to you or not depends not only on his words, but also on his actions. Wen Chung flung his hand away. I don't care. However, he still glanced at the hairpin. No woman disliked beauty, and Wen Chung was no exception. Su Yu's expression was calm as he pointed at the hairpin. This, Marquis Wolf County sneered. Choose another one. I've already bought this one. The shopkeeper looked at him apologetically. Apologies, sir. These are all unique styles. There is no second style. Su Yu continued. I mean, except for this one, I bought everything else. The shopkeeper was stunned, wondering if he had heard wrongly. I don't understand what you mean. Slap. A black card was slammed onto the table by Su Yu. I don't want to say it a second time. The shopkeeper gasped. Esteemed black card? There were at least 100 million heavenly law coins in the black card. Not to mention these jewelry. Even half of the items in the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce could be bought with it. Yes, 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 sir. I'll get it for you immediately. The shopkeeper held the black card in his hand. He was afraid that Suyu would go back on his word. He took out all the jewelry from the counter as quickly as he could and placed them respectfully in front of Suyu. There are a total of 130 pieces, all of which are valuable. Please examine them, sir. His expression was filled with reverence. How could a person who could spend hundreds of millions of Dao coins to buy jewelry for a woman be simple? There weren't many people like him in the many dilapidated civilizations, so how could he not respect him? Suyu picked out the hairpin from the pile and threw it to Marquis Langguan. Yours. Then, he wrapped up the rest and stuffed it into Wencheng's arms. Go home and pick slowly. Wencheng was dumbstruck. He held onto the heavy jewelry as he was carried away by Suyu. Only Marquis Langguan was left standing in shock, his hand holding the hairpin that he had spent a year's worth of blood and sweat to buy. He thought it was a big deal to spend 3 million. However, the other party had actually spent nearly 100 million on Wencheng in one go. What did that mean? In that instant, he felt that he was completely inferior to Wencheng. He was not worthy of Wencheng at all. After staring blankly for a long time, he slowly came back to his senses and shook his head. No, you shouldn't think like that. Being rich isn't a big deal. What's important is ability. I am the only person City Lord Wenyuan can rely on. Whether City Lord Wenyuan values money or ability, the answer is obvious. Today's broken civilization lacked all kinds of resources, not money. What was the use of having money that could not buy things? Thinking to this point, he pulled himself together. Looks like I need to get Wencheng as soon as possible to prevent any accidents from happening, Marquis Langguan muttered to himself. However, I need to think of a way to urge City Lord Wenyuan. After Suyu returned, he immediately went into seclusion. Using the various materials he had bought, he sped up the fusion of his soul and body. With the help of the materials, he estimated that he would succeed in a few days. At that time, he would be able to freely control his current body and use the strength of his body to his heart's content. Wencheng was sprawled on the table, unable to contain his joy as he picked out his favorite jewelry. He said delightedly, "It is said that there is a house of gold in books, and there is a beauty in books. To think that not only did I find a beauty, but a beauty who carries a house of gold with her." Suyu quietly fused with his soul, calmly saying, "Is that Marquis Langguan really your fiancé?" The difference between them was too great. As the daughter of a city lord, Wencheng should not have married into such a poor family. Wencheng played with the jewelry, already resigned to his fate. He said nonchalantly, "That's right. Who asked my father to have no one to rely on? I can only rely on him." Suyu finally understood the ins and outs of the matter after asking in detail. To think that the 9-star civilization that I have been pursuing is actually like this. Suyu sighed. The weak could only struggle at death's door in the abandoned 9-star civilization, like vagrants. The strong could enjoy the limitless resources in the flourishing lands of the current world. Why don't you just move to another abandoned civilization? Suyu asked. Wencheng put down the jewelry and laughed bitterly. Do you think that there are no wanderers in the other abandoned civilizations? If we move there, there will definitely be conflicts, and there will be many casualties. Suyu understood. There was more than one abandoned civilization in front of them. It would be good if we could protect the abandoned civilization in front of us. Many abandoned civilizations have already been occupied and destroyed by foreign civilizations. Their fates are even worse. Wencheng said helplessly, wanderers living in abandoned civilizations would never have any hope of making a name for themselves. They lived in constant fear, lest someday they should be annihilated. So, the abandoned civilizations in the vicinity have all dried up? Suyu asked. Wencheng shook his head. Not entirely. There is an abandoned 9-star civilization nearby. There are still many precious resources left on it, but it is very difficult to excavate them. Because there are many terrifying beasts at the level of the master of the heavenly law living on it, we can't go there at all. The level of the master of the heavenly law? With Su Yu's current cultivation and the physique of Prince Mirrorflower, there was no need to fear the ordinary master of the heavenly law. He could kill them with a single slap. Unless the opponent's cultivation was at the later stage of the master of the heavenly law, there was no need to fear him. Or, if the opponent was large in number, they could pose a slight threat. Well, if there's a chance, I will go and have a look, Su Yu said. He had come to the 9-star civilization, but now he had nothing. He needed to establish his own force in order to gain a foothold in the 9-star civilization. It was necessary to develop a strong force. The demonic beasts of the master of the heavenly law would be great mounts. Therefore, he had to go and investigate whenever he had the chance. Several days passed. With the help of many materials, he finally fused with Prince Mirrorflower's body perfectly. Except for a few parts of the body that he felt unbearable, the rest was fine. Chapter 2882. Without a doubt, Marquis Langguan had complained to the Wenyuan city master. Oh, wait a minute. Wensheng looked at Su Yu, meaning for him to hide for a while to avoid being discovered by his father. Su Yu nodded and immediately deployed the space domain, turning into a speck of dust and landing on Wensheng's shoulder. The latter was dumbfounded, looking around but unable to find Su Yu. What are you looking at? Hurry up and deal with your father. Su Yu's voice came from his shoulder, scaring Wensheng. Wensheng was extremely shocked. Su Yu was really surprising her. After cleaning up the traces left behind by Su Yu, Wensheng opened the door and pretended not to know. Father, what's wrong? The Wenyuan city master's face sank. Let me ask you, did you go to the first city 3 days ago? Yes. With a man? Yes. Wensheng was very honest. A misunderstanding was a misunderstanding. He was not afraid of his father getting angry. The Wenyuan city master pointed angrily. You want to anger me to death. What if Marquis Langguan runs away? Wensheng did not care. If he runs, he won't complain to you. Hey, how can you be so insensible? I know you feel wronged, but you can't do something so shameful as to make peace with a man, right? The Wenyuan city master rebuked. Wensheng laughed coldly. As long as I have a clear conscience. Father, is there anything else? If not, I'm going to rest, Wensheng said calmly. He had nothing to say to his father. Wait, the Wenyuan city master said with a straight face. The nearby Haotian civilization has begun to collapse again. The demonic beasts inside have all dispersed. You and Marquis Langguan will lead the strong men of Wenyuan City to excavate resources. Most of the abandoned 9-star civilizations were unstable and always in the process of collapse. The nearby Haotian civilization was the same, and every time it collapsed, the ferocious demonic beasts would flee in all directions. They had no time to hunt for invaders. Therefore, this was the best opportunity for the broken civilization. As long as they were willing to take the risk of collapse, they could excavate countless treasures. The #1 city was originally a city that was about the same size as profound Wenyuan City. After the collapse of the Haotian civilization, they managed to excavate many precious resources from above, which gave them the opportunity to grow stronger today. Now that the Haotian civilization was collapsing on a small scale, there was another opportunity. How could Wenyuan City give it up? Hearing that he was going with Marquis Wolf Officer, Wensheng instinctively refused. However, Su Yu's voice sounded in his ears. Agree to him. I'll protect you in secret, so don't worry. Wensheng thought about Su Yu's terrifying physique and movement techniques. He did not want to go against his father's wishes, so he nodded and agreed. All right. City Lord Wenyuan was surprised. Based on his understanding of his daughter, she would definitely not go. She didn't expect him to agree so readily. Presumably, the reprimand just now made his daughter feel remorseful, so she wanted to travel with Marquis Wolf Officer to improve their relationship. This was something City Lord Wenyuan was happy to see. All right, we'll leave tonight. Hurry up and get ready. The collapse of the Haotian civilization was sudden and did not give people enough time to prepare. All civilizations were racing against time to seize the initiative. All right, in the evening, several streaks of starlight had already soared into the sky, leaving the current dilapidated civilization and heading towards the nearby Haotian civilization. That was because the other cities had already sent people there. City Lord Wen Yuan could not wait any longer. He hurriedly summoned Wen Cheng and Marquis Wolf Officer, as well as a group of capable generals. There's no time to continue preparing. All of you set off immediately. Marquis Wolf Officer will tell you the details of the collapse along the way. City Lord Wen Yuan immediately sent people on their way. The group immediately boarded the flying doctrine artifact and sped towards the Haotian civilization. They entered the pitch-black nothingness. Wen Cheng was a little uneasy. She shrank into a corner and secretly transmitted her voice to the surroundings. "Where are you?" "I'm here," Suyu replied briefly. Wen Cheng immediately felt at ease, as if there was nothing to worry about as long as Suyu was there. Marquis Wolf Officer had a hint of caution in his eyes. "Wen Cheng, who are you talking to?" He looked around, but there was no one there. "Air," Wen Cheng calmly said. "Talking to air?" Marquis Wolf Officer thought Wen Cheng was speaking out of anger. He stepped forward and sat beside her, trying to hug her. "Wen Cheng, when we reach the Haotian civilization, I will protect you." However, Wen Cheng cleverly avoided him and moved to another corner, saying, "Please behave yourself." The rest of the people on the doctrine artifact could not help but snicker. "Haste makes waste. Marquis Wolf Officer, please slow down." "That's right. Miss Wen Cheng is still an unmarried virgin." Marquis Wolf Officer looked embarrassed when he heard the people's teasing. He was annoyed and secretly glared at Wen Cheng. He snorted in his heart. "When we reach the Haotian civilization, I will make sure that no one will respond to you." He smiled casually. "Now, let's talk about the situation at the Haotian civilization. We have detected a small-scale collapse in the 98th district. The civilization energy there has probably been weakened to the extreme. It cannot withstand the collapse and has begun to collapse. The area of the collapse is hundreds of millions of square miles, which is equivalent to the area of our dilapidated civilization. Because of the collapse, all the demonic beasts within the target area have fled. Therefore, we need to spread out and dig for more resources as fast as possible. Before the demonic beasts return, we must leave the Haotian civilization and complete this excavation mission." Everyone understood that the most important thing for this mission was time. They had to leave the Haotian civilization before the tide of demonic beasts returned. "Now let's assign teams," Marquis Wolf Officer said. "Wen Cheng and I will be in a team." "I refuse," Wen Cheng said without hesitation. "I can go alone." She hated Marquis Wolf Officer and understood his character. Did she think that she was too safe to team up with him? Marquis Wolf Officer smiled and did not say much. After all, this little sheep would not be able to run away in the Haotian civilization. "All right, but I'll still assign someone for you. Nephrite, you'll be with Wen Cheng." He assigned a female. Wen Cheng did not refuse. Soon, the teams were all arranged. Soon, everyone arrived in the sky above the Haotian civilization. "Let's go." Marquis Wolf Officer looked serious. He had two goals this time. Apart from cooking his life and obtaining Wen Cheng, there was another goal. He wanted to obtain an astonishing amount of resources so that City Lord Wen Yuan would have nothing to say and marry Wen Cheng as soon as possible. Wen Cheng and his companion, named Nephrite, landed in the Haotian civilization. What they saw was a desolate, collapsed area. Mountains had collapsed and the ground had cracked. There was devastation everywhere. Not far away, there was an abandoned city that was almost engulfed by the cracked ground. Their eyes lit up. "We're so lucky to encounter a city as soon as we arrived," Nephrite said happily. Chapter 2883. The two immediately entered and were delighted to find a large number of abandoned resources. There were all kinds of cultivation techniques, doctrine artifacts, and even many ores. After searching for 2 days, they had searched the entire city. Nephrite weighed the 5 spatial storage devices in her hand and was extremely excited. "This is the first time I've obtained so many resources. The City Lord will definitely praise me when we return." They were really lucky this time. Others might still be searching for resources at this moment, but they had already obtained countless resources. Wen Cheng had to be careful. It's been 2 days. I wonder when those monsters will return. Nephrite did not care at all and continued searching for resources. Don't worry. There are people monitoring from the artifacts. Once danger approaches, they will immediately inform Marquis Wolf Officer, and he will inform us in turn. Wen Cheng thought about it and forced herself to focus on searching for resources. After all, this was a rare opportunity. The two of them searched the southern part of the city and searched almost every corner of the city. It's about time to change places, Wen Cheng said to herself. Suddenly, the two's messages appeared at the same time. Wen Cheng was shocked. Are the monsters back? No, it's Marquis Wolf Officer who informed us that he found a huge city and told us to hurry over. Nephrite looked through the message happily. Wen Cheng frowned slightly. She did not want to go over. Being with Marquis Wolf Officer made her feel very insecure. However, they were about to leave the Haotian civilization and would meet up sooner or later. Forget it, let's go, Wen Cheng said unhappily. What they didn't know was that as soon as the two of them left, a huge demonic beast emerged from the ruins behind them. A pair of blood-red eyes stared at the two's backs in the dark ruins. However, it did not dare to go forward. That was because its eyes were filled with fear and dread. Clearly, it had keenly sensed that there was an extremely terrifying existence on that girl. So much so that it did not dare to move. Several hours later, the two quickly rushed over according to the location of the message. However, when they arrived, they were surprised to find that this was not a huge city, but an abandoned mine. Looking at the traces, it should have been excavated by someone and had no value to speak of. Something's wrong. Wen Cheng immediately sensed the problem and turned to escape. However, it was too late to escape now. Since you're already here, you still want to leave? A huge net descended from the sky, enveloping everything nearby. Wen Cheng and the others only had movement techniques, but they could not escape at all. They were enveloped on the spot. A teasing female laughter came from the mine. How have you been, Sister Wen Cheng? Wen Cheng turned his head and immediately recognized her. Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan was the daughter of the city lord of the #1 city. Ever since she was young, she had been born in outstanding beauty, beautiful and moving. That wasn't all. Her cultivation was also great, already reaching the peak of the Dao Lord realm. Her status was also higher than hers. In short, he was better than Wen Cheng in every aspect. She was dressed in a long blue gown and looked very lovely. Her beautiful face had a faint smile on it. A large group of cultivators from the first city surged out from behind her and subdued the two women. They then snatched the resources that they had painstakingly gathered and handed them over to Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan's eyes lit up and his smile widened. I didn't expect you to have such a great harvest, right? Just the two of you have found more than the 10 of us. Wen Cheng bit her lips and said, We got it. Let us go. There was a rule between the cities of broken civilizations. They were not allowed to kill each other over resources. This was a bottom line. There were not many cultivators in broken civilizations to begin with. If they were to engage in a fierce battle, because of this, it would wear down their vitality. Sooner or later, people from other civilizations would take advantage of this weakness and invade. Sure. However, aren't you concerned about how I was able to trick you into coming here? Xiaoyan asked. The one who had sent the message was Marquis Wolf Officer. Marquis Wolf Officer's current situation was obvious. She clapped her hands, and two people from Profound Literature City were brought over. One of them was Marquis Wolf Officer. When he realized that Wen Cheng had also been subdued, he struggled angrily and said, Xiaoyan, come at me if you have any problems. Don't make things difficult for Wen Cheng. He looked as if he was extremely concerned about Wen Cheng. However, in Wen Cheng's eyes, he was too pretentious and did not affect her emotions at all. She was even a little disappointed. It would be great if Xiaoyan could kill Marquis Wolf Officer. What a sincere Marquis Wolf Officer, Xiaoyan said regretfully. You don't want a great beauty like me, but you want that little girl Wen Cheng. I really don't know what you're thinking. It seemed that Xiaoyan had publicly announced that she had taken a liking to Marquis Wolf Officer, but had been flatly rejected by him. Marquis Wolf Officer said sternly, I, Marquis Wolf Officer, have only liked Wen Cheng in my life. I, Marquis Wolf Officer, appreciate Miss Xiao Yan's affection. His words seemed to come from the depths of his heart. They were especially sincere and moved people's hearts, causing Xiao Yan's eyes to shimmer. Stop pretending. Don't you find it disgusting? Wen Cheng said bluntly, undisguised disgust on her face. She stared at Xiao Yan and said, Tell me, which eye are you blind? Why would you take a liking to the old, ugly, and lecherous Marquis Wolf officer? If you really take a liking to him, then be together with him. What are you pretending in front of me for? Women understood other women the best. Xiao Yan would take a liking to Marquis Wolf officer? What a joke. Even if she died, she would not even look at Marquis Wolf officer. Now, she was saying such things in front of her. Wasn't she trying to set off Marquis Wolf officer? Wen Cheng was almost certain that the two of them were in cahoots. They were singing the same tune, showing off their friendship. Marquis Wolf officer's face stiffened, his eyes flashing. Xiao Yan's pupils also contracted, but she pretended to be calm and sighed. Little sister Wen Cheng, you really don't know how lucky you are. Marquis Wolf officer is the #1 warrior of profound literature city. Isn't it normal for me to have feelings for him? On the other hand, you are his fiancée, but you don't know how to cherish him. As an outsider, I can't stand it. Wen Cheng laughed. If you can't stand it, then don't look. Let me go. Xiao Yan's expression was somewhat unsightly. Wen Cheng's personality was too stubborn, and she couldn't be persuaded with words. A gentleman has the beauty of helping others achieve their goals. I'll fulfill you 2 lovebirds. Xiao Yan took out 2 jade bottles. Wen Cheng sensed that something was wrong. What are you doing? Xiao Yan had a faint smile on his face. This is a resource I just found. It's useful for 2 people who are in love with each other. It's perfect for you and Marquis Wolf. What? Wen Cheng's face instantly turned deathly pale, and she said angrily, You dare? Marquis Wolf officer was overjoyed. This was indeed a trap he had set up. He and Xiao Yan had joined hands and were prepared to openly take care of Wen Cheng. Afterwards, when the profound literature city lord interrogated them, anyone could testify that he had betrayed them. What was done, and Wen Cheng had lost her purity. What else could she do besides marry him? Chapter 2884. Of course, on the surface, Marquis Wolf officer would righteously refuse. Xiao Yan, I won't allow you to hurt Wen Cheng. Stop. Otherwise, you and I will be irreconcilable. Xiao Yan smiled sweetly. I'll help you, but you still want to be irreconcilable with me? How heartless. Marquis Langguan struggled with all his might and growled, Don't do this to Wen Cheng. She's just a kind child. When Wen Cheng heard this, he was unmoved. All that was left in his eyes was a disdainful sneer. Keep pretending. Did he really think that she couldn't tell that the 2 of them were conspiring? How could she not know what kind of person Marquis Wolf officer was? Lecherous as life itself. Now that he was about to obtain her, why would he resist so fiercely? He was just putting on an act for everyone to see. In fact, he was incomparably happy. However, even though she understood, Wen Cheng could not point it out. She could only seek help from Suyu. Ryu, save me. However, what caused Wen Cheng's heart to fall to rock bottom was that there was no response from his shoulder. Even when Xiao Yan walked up to him with a smile, Suyu still showed no signs of showing himself. Could it be that he saw that the situation was bad and slipped away quietly? Thinking of this, Wen Cheng could not help but panic. It was as if his strong support had suddenly collapsed. Don't leave me behind. She sent a telepathic message, but there was still no response, until Xiao Yan opened the jade bottle and blew at Wen Cheng. Wen Cheng immediately felt his eyelids become heavy, and his body became extremely hot. Then he fainted. Afterwards, Xiao Yan took out another small bottle and blew it towards Marquis Wolf officer. There was actually nothing inside the bottle, but Marquis Wolf officer pretended to be poisoned and fainted on the spot. Send them to the bridal chamber. Xiao Yan smiled slightly. Immediately, someone carried them into the underground mine. Let's go. With a wave of her hand, the group of people left in satisfaction. Who would have thought that as soon as he flew into the air, he would see a figure sitting cross-legged in the clouds? The other party was dressed in a black robe, and it was impossible to tell if it was a man or a woman. Xiaoyan's expression was solemn. This was the abandoned Haoyan civilization, and only two types of people existed here. One was his own people, and the other was his enemies. The other party was most likely someone sent by another city. "Who is it?" Xiaoyan shouted. Suyu looked at her and said indifferently, "Since you have fallen in love with Marquis Lang Guan and feel that he is a dragon among men, why don't you leave the opportunity for yourself?" Xiaoyan's eyes were cold as he said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just advising you to mind your own business. You probably can't interfere in the affairs of my #1 city." As the daughter of the city lord of the largest city, her status was revered and few could compare to her. These words came from the confidence in his bones, and he wasn't trying to be tough on the outside, but weak on the inside. They believed that the people of the broken civilization did not have the right to meddle in their business. However, Suyu was not one of them. "I am a kind and charitable person, and I love to help people achieve their goals." Suyu walked over slowly. "Today, I will do a good deed to help you achieve your goal." Xiaoyan sneered. With so many of them, would they be afraid of a single person? Needless to say, her companions immediately stepped forward. You must be blind to come and find trouble alone. This kind of person might have some treasures that he thinks are powerful. We should be more cautious and attack together." Suyu took a step forward, the time rippling beneath his feet. The surrounding space immediately froze, including the group of people. Suyu walked in the crowd and grabbed Xiaoyan, who was laughing coldly. He then found the bottle of secret medicine in her sleeves. He then brought it into the underground mine. In the mine, the two of them were still unconscious. Suyu carried Wencheng and put Xiaoyan down. He then blew the bottle of medicine toward Marquis Langguan. Xiaoyan's body had been frozen in time, but her consciousness was not. She watched as Suyu rescued Wencheng and drugged Marquis Langguan, but she could not resist. After doing all this, Suyu casually set up a barrier, saying, "Have a good night with the hero you admire." He flicked his finger, and the time freeze immediately ended. Xiaoyan tried to rush out in a panic, but she was blocked by the barrier. With her strength, she could not break it. "No, let me out, let me out," Xiaoyan said in fear. Suyu stood outside, calmly saying, "I have the right to help you. You like Marquis Langguan so much and feel that he is so outstanding. Why are you resisting? Wouldn't it be better to enjoy it?" He waved his hands and left leisurely. "No!" Xiaoyan screamed. "Ugh!" A light sound came from behind her. Xiaoyan looked over in fear, only to see Marquis Langguan slowly opening his eyes. His gaze was blurry, a result of the medicine taking effect. "No! How can my innocence be ruined by a useless old man like you? I am a woman who is going to marry into a 9-star civilization." Xiaoyan screamed. Just as Wencheng had said, she was the daughter of the city master of the #1 city. She had looks, talents, and status. What was Marquis Langguan? He was at most a servant, and an old, ugly, and lowly servant. How could she like him? Seeing that Marquis Langguan was about to wake up, Xiaoyan's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. She pulled out a dagger and stabbed it toward Marquis Langguan's heart. "Don't blame me. Blame yourself for being too dirty and not worthy of me." Xiaoyan's expression was ferocious. However, just as she was about to stab him, Marquis Langguan woke up completely and grabbed Xiaoyan's wrist. His eyes were bloodshot, and he panted heavily. He had clearly realized that he was on the verge of collapse. Xiaoyan panicked and said hurriedly, "Lowly slave, let go, or else my father will kill you." At the mention of her father, Marquis Langguan immediately let go, as if out of fear. However, just as Xiaoyan was about to escape, he pounced on her like a wild beast and pressed her down, kissing and groping her all over. "Ah, you dirty thing, get out of my way," Xiaoyan screamed. Marquis Langguan was merely a slave that her father had groomed. He had purposely arranged for him to enter Profound Knowledge City and become a spy. He had also thought of ways to gain control of Profound Knowledge City. The first step was to marry Wencheng and become the son-in-law of Profound Knowledge City's city master. The second step was to kill Profound Knowledge City's city master. This way, Profound Knowledge City would fall into the hands of the first city without bloodshed. Everything had been carried out flawlessly, but the appearance of the black-robed man had messed up the plan. The more Xiao Yin struggled, the harder it was for Marquis Langguan to control himself. With a low roar, he tore apart Xiao Yan's clothes and crazily invaded her body at the same time. Suyu brought Wencheng to a safe area where they could meet up. Along the way, he had already removed the secret medicine from Wencheng's body. At the meeting place, the members of Profound Knowledge City had all returned. There was an alarm that the nearby demonic beasts were returning and would soon reoccupy the collapsed area. Hence, they had to leave. The arrival of the black-robed man made them wary. Chapter 2885. When they saw the unconscious Wencheng, they all turned pale with fright and surrounded her. Suyu put her on the ground expressionlessly and said, "When she wakes up, tell her I'll go back when I have time." As he spoke, he teleported and disappeared, leaving the horrified crowd to support Wencheng into the flying magic treasure. "Why isn't Marquis Wolf Officer back yet?" the crowd asked worriedly. Roar. In the distance, the strange cries of demonic beasts could be heard, and a large cloud of smoke and dust rose into the sky. "We can't wait any longer. We must leave." The crowd made a prompt decision and steered the flying treasure away from the ground. Rumble. They could see with the naked eye that the ground was densely packed with demonic beasts, like locusts passing through, reoccupying the collapsed area. "It's over. Marquis Wolf Officer has been sacrificed." The crowd sighed. The huge commotion woke Wencheng up from her coma. She looked around at her companions in confusion, then at the familiar flying treasure. She rubbed her aching forehead. "Where are we?" "Miss, we have left the Haotian civilization." "Left?" Wencheng suddenly woke up, looking at the Haotian civilization that was getting further and further away, feeling even more confused. Wasn't she drugged by Xiaoyan and about to be ravaged by Marquis Wolf Officer? Could it be? Wencheng's face turned pale as she thought of this, and she immediately touched her body. But to her surprise, there were no signs of her being violated, and she could not help but be shocked. "Who saved me?" Wencheng asked. "A mysterious man in black sent you to us," the crowd said with a strange expression. "It's her." Wencheng's disappointed heart immediately came back to life, and her small face was full of joy. "I knew Sister Ryu would not leave me behind." She immediately sent a telepathic message. Ryu, you are so bad. Why didn't you save me earlier?" Unfortunately, there was no response. She tried several times, but there was no sound, which made her even more surprised. "Miss, before the man in black left, he said he would come back when he had time." Wencheng's heart, which had just been filled with joy, fell to the bottom again. Her mood had been full of twists and turns, all because of Suyu. He left. Wencheng was extremely disappointed. Although they had only known each other for a short time, Suyu had given her so many surprises and so many differences. Her dull life had a trace of color that had never been there before. Did he really say he would come back? Wencheng asked blankly. Yes. Wencheng was stunned for a long time before he waved his hand. Let's go back. All of a sudden, she felt something heavy in her sleeve. She looked inside and saw more than a dozen spatial storage devices. Other than the 5 that had been snatched away by Xiao Yin, there were 7 or 8 other strangers. He opened it and saw that it was full of resources. Wencheng immediately understood that Suyu had not only saved him from Xiao Yan's evil hands, but had also taken away all of his resources. In the past, Great Wencheng would have been overjoyed. This was because these resources were enough for Wenyuan City to use for more than 10 years. It was enough for them to calmly send an expeditionary force to an even more distant, abandoned civilization in search of the necessary resources. But now, Wencheng could not be happy at all, because what was gained was far from enough to make up for what was lost. Speaking of Suyu, left alone in the abandoned Haotian civilization, he sat on the rubble of an abandoned city, looking at the flood of demonic beasts that were occupying the abandoned city. A demonic beast with a chaotic aura is really unusual, Suyu muttered to himself. He saw with his own eyes that these chaos beasts could turn into mist. Suyu was no stranger to such an ability. The little Kylan also knew this trick. Let's test their abilities first. Suyu leaped into the tide of beasts. His plan was to take all the beasts for his own use and turn them into a part of his power. However, if their spiritual intelligence and strength were not up to the task, then they would be useless. His appearance immediately attracted the attention of a large number of demonic beasts. They rushed over in a frenzy and attacked Suyu. Suyu looked at them one by one. Early stage of the Earth Law Master and Heaven Law Master. Not bad. Among them, the weakest was at the early stage of the Earth Law Master, and the strongest was at the early stage of the Heaven Law Master. The rarest thing was that their numbers were huge. If he could tame all of them, it would be an unimaginably terrifying power. Seeing a few attacks coming at him, Suyu reached out his palm and casually grabbed them, destroying all the attacks of the demonic beasts. Then he performed the secret space technique and took all the demonic beasts within his sight into the spatial storage device. After that, the entire ruins of the city were emptied. There was not a single demonic beast left. There's still a long way to go, Suyu said helplessly as he looked at the endless tide of beasts in the distance. It would take a lot of time to capture all the demonic beasts in the entire Haotian civilization. He leaped and left. From a hidden place in the ruins, two young men in luxurious clothes walked out with their hands behind their backs. Their temperaments were indifferent, and their expressions were calm. There was no trace of a broken civilization struggling to survive in their eyes. I didn't expect there to be such experts among the wanderers. The purple-robed young man on the left was dumbfounded. The red-robed young man on the right said, "It's reasonable. Over the years, how many criminals have the 9-star civilization exiled to the barren land? Some of them are extremely talented. After countless years of training, it's not surprising that they have reached their current level." "That's true," the purple-robed young man said thoughtfully. The conversation between the two revealed their identities. They were from a 9-star civilization. However, this person is also stupid. He wants to capture all the demonic beasts in the Haotian civilization with his own strength. He's overestimating himself. How many demonic beasts are there in the Haotian civilization? It's impossible to capture all of them without at least 8 to 10 years. The red-robed young man did not think so. He said, "It only shows that the other party's information is too limited. He doesn't know that there's a king among these beasts. If he can capture it, he can command all the demonic beasts. It's much easier than capturing them one by one." The purple-robed young man smiled. "Let's not waste any more time. Let's go find the king of the demonic beasts and remove the sharp horn on its head." The red-robed young man laughed. "You want to woo that fairy too? I advise you to give up early. There are many people who are pursuing her. As if you didn't come here to find what the fairy needs to please her." The two of them looked at each other, and there was a hint of hostility between them. However, they had a tacit understanding and did not make a move. Instead, they left one after another to find the king of the demonic beasts. What they did not know was that after they left, a light suddenly flashed in the sky, and Suyu's figure appeared. Chapter 2886. But who is this fairy they are talking about? Is she worth falling out with for a woman? How childish. Suyu shook his head and followed the two young men silently. They had come prepared and had a way to find the demonic beast king. The purple-robed young man used a compass to locate the location and finally found a 5-finger-shaped lake. This should be the mark left behind by a certain powerful being in the civilization. It's inside. The red-robed young man stared at the calm and deep lake and narrowed his eyes. With a pinch of his fingers, he took out a ball of lightning from his sleeve and threw it into the hole. Whoosh! All of a sudden, lightning flashed in the lake, illuminating the entire lake. All the fish in the lake died in an instant. Splash! At the same time, a shocking wave rose into the sky and slammed into the air. Looking over, an incomparably large black Qilin actually emerged from the water. Suyu's eyes narrowed. Kylan. The little Kylan was the only one left in the 8-star civilization that had gone extinct. He did not expect to see a mature one on an abandoned 9-star civilization. "Why are you bothering me?" The black Kylan stared at the two young men coldly and angrily. It was exuding the powerful aura of a middle-stage, heavenly law master. However, in the face of the two seemingly weak young men, there was a hint of fear in the black Kylan's eyes. Haha, we are bothering you. We have come to discuss something with you. The purple-robed young man's lips curled into a faint smile. He did not look like he was facing a giant creature that had yet to appear. He was only facing a slave who had given him everything he wanted. Speak. The black Kylan's eyes flickered, and he finally suppressed his murderous intent and said calmly. The purple-robed young man said, I have come to borrow a pair of horns from your head. The black Kylan released black flames all over its body, and its eyes were burning with anger. Are you kidding me? This horn is the foundation of my existence. How could I give it to someone else? Most of its essence was concentrated in the two horns on its head. The purple-robed young man took out a token and waved it in front of the black Kylan. The Fong family? The black Kylan was shocked, and the fear in its eyes turned into fear. The Fong family was a powerful race among the 9-star civilizations. Every clansman was born with a wind attribute domain. The powerful beings in the clan were even more earth-shattering existences. Looks like you have some sense. The purple-robed youth took back the token and said, Give me a pair of horns now. It's better than my Fong clan coming to find you, right? You should know how miserable your fate will be if they find you. The black Cheelin was filled with fear. With its powerful cultivation, once it was found by the experts of the Fong clan, it would at least be imprisoned forever and become a pet of the Fong clan. In the worst-case scenario, they might be captured and killed, and all of the materials on their bodies would be sold. Whichever it was, the black Cheelin would rather die than encounter it. I can only give you one horn, and you must guarantee that no one will disturb me again, said the black Cheelin. The purple-robed youth licked his lips. No problem. He wanted a pair because he wanted a bargain. He would be satisfied if he could get one. The black Cheelin gritted its teeth and endured the pain as it slammed its head into the boulder by the lake. Crack! One of the horns on its head broke immediately. Before it could clean the blood on its head, the black Cheelin kicked the horn to the purple-robed youth. Take it and don't come back. All right. The purple-robed youth picked up the horn and left with a smile. The black Cheelin stared at the other red-robed youth and frowned. Why aren't you leaving? At that moment, the purple-robed youth looked at it with a faint smile. Let me introduce you to the ancient Tomb clan. We're not on the same side. What? The black Cheelin thought that the two of them were on the same side and asking for the same thing. The black Cheelin felt like it had been tricked. If it had known this would happen, it would not have handed over the broken horn so easily. What do you want then? The black Cheelin said, Don't tell me you want the other horn too? If that's the case, I can only apologize. If it lost both of its horns, it would no longer be able to stand in the Hao-Ian civilization. It would not be able to command all the monsters and become their king. It would most likely be killed and replaced by some of the more ambitious monsters. Of course not. Why would I want her horn? The red-robed youth said. The black Cheelin heaved a sigh of relief. As long as he was not asking for the horn, everything else was negotiable. What I want is your heart. The red-robed youth took out an ancient skeleton dagger and said, I heard that your heart is different from ordinary creatures. If you give it to the person you love, you'll fall in love with the person who gave it to you. The black Cheelin's face darkened. You're shameless. The two of them were conspiring. First, they tricked the black Cheelin out of its horn, causing its cultivation level to drop. Then, they revealed their true colors and took its life. The purple-robed youth turned around and waved the horn in his hand. Congratulations, you're right. The two of them had no intention of letting the black Cheelin go. Accept your fate, black Cheelin. You're one of the few wild Cheelins in the world. Everything you have, even a single hair, is worth a lot. The red-robed youth waved the dagger in his hand. No, the black Cheelin was enraged. Black flames shot into the sky. However, compared to before, it was much weaker. That was the disadvantage of having a broken horn. It's useless, the red-robed youth said. You have no chance of survival in front of the ancient Tomb clan. He took the black Cheelin's horn from the purple-robed youth. He raised the dagger in his hand and stabbed it into the horn. It turned out that the dagger was not used to hurt the black Sheelan. It was used to target the horn. However, the strange thing was that when the dagger stabbed into the horn, a red light seeped into the horn. The black Sheelan actually let out a blood-curdling screech, unable to bear the burden. Its huge body ran around crazily because of the pain. In the end, it stumbled and fell to the ground. Its body kept twitching, and white foam came out of its mouth. Its eyes quickly dimmed. It was a sign that its life was fading. How could a middle-stage heaven-down master be killed by a skeleton dagger so strangely? The red-robed youth finally smiled. He walked up to the black Sheelan with the dagger in hand. He looked at the black Sheelan's chest, searching for its heart. The black Sheelan's eyes were filled with sorrow. It had compromised for the sake of survival. However, it did not get any sympathy from its enemies. All it had was endless greed. If it had another chance, it would not compromise so easily. Chapter 2887. Without warning, the purple-robed youth took out a golden bow and shot an arrow at the back of the red-robed youth. Plop! The red-robed youth was completely unprepared, and the arrow pierced through his heart. He turned his head in disbelief and saw the purple-robed youth sneering. "I'm sorry, but the fairy belongs to me alone." That fairy was actually so mesmerizing that they started killing each other. "You, the ancient Toon clan will not let you go." The red-robed youth spat out a mouthful of black blood, leaving a skull mark on the ground. He died on the spot. The purple-robed youth smiled. "You died at the hands of the Black Kylan. Why are the ancient Toon clan looking for trouble with me?" He walked forward and pulled the arrow out of the red-robed youth's back. Then, he erased the traces of the youth's attack and made it look like he had been injured by a demonic beast. After that, he picked up the red-robed youth's skull dagger and stabbed it into the chest of the Black Kylan. "I want your heart." However, just as he was stabbing the dagger, the purple-robed youth suddenly saw a standing black-robed figure. He was startled. He looked sideways and found that it was a black-robed man who had appeared out of nowhere. "Who are you?" The purple-robed youth stepped back immediately and took out his golden bow, aiming at the black-robed man. Suyu raised his finger and waved it gently. A wave of space power swept out and knocked the golden bow away. At the same time, the terrifying power of the early stage of the Master of the Heaven Law was released. "Get lost," he said lightly. The purple-robed youth clenched his teeth and looked at the Black Kylan on the ground. He was extremely unwilling to give up. However, there was no one around, so no one would know that he had been killed. Therefore, he could only clench his teeth and choose to leave. Suyu turned to look at the dying Black Kylan and said, "Do you know what you lack?" The Black Kylan was extremely weak, and Suyu's blurry figure was reflected in its dim eyes. "You lack strength." Suyu placed his palm on the Black Kylan's head and activated the life domain to heal its injury. The Black Kylan slowly recovered and asked, "Why did you save me?" "To give you a way to survive," Suyu said lightly. "Instead of being targeted and killed by others, why don't you follow me?" The Black Kylan stared at Suyu and asked, "Can you guarantee that I won't be slaughtered if I follow you?" His eyes were filled with deep mockery. "Since you've appeared here, there's no doubt that you're also a wanderer that can't be tolerated by the 9-star civilization, right? Why do you have to give me a way out?" When Suyu saw that his injuries were almost healed, he retracted his palm and casually said, "You're right. If I don't show it to you, you'll probably really think that I'm here to take advantage of you." He raised his hand and waved it into the distance. Bang! In an instant, the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. At the end of the horizon, a ball of fire burst into the sky, like a volcano suddenly erupting. Thick smoke billowed in the sky. The earth shook violently. At first glance, it looked like the waves of the sea. The intense heat, under the impact of the violent chi waves, violently swept over, igniting everything nearby. In the blink of an eye, the entire area had turned into a sea of fire. In the light of the fire, Suyu's back looked exceptionally extraordinary. It was as if he was a peerless existence that controlled the heavens and earth and suppressed the universe. The Black Kylan's eyes widened, and they were filled with shock. The power of that palm was extraordinary almost close to the later stage of the heavenly Lam master. Suyu quietly retracted his palm, looked at the black Kylan again, and said lightly, "Do you know your ignorance now?" He was secretly satisfied. After his soul had merged with the body of Jinghua Tianzi, he could indeed use the body to release a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. It was more than enough to scare ordinary people. The black Kylan shuddered all over. Dragging his seriously injured body, he immediately climbed up and said respectfully, "Greetings, Senior. I have eyes but fail to see. I didn't know your true colors." Suyu said lightly, "You're smart. I'll ask you one last time. Will you follow me or not?" This time, the black Kylan did not hesitate at all. He was even pleasantly surprised and excited. "Thank you for taking me in, Senior. I can't thank you enough." After so many years, he had finally found a backer. One should know how difficult it was to be a demonic beast without a strong background. He would be targeted at every turn, and he might even lose his life. For example, today, a few juniors had almost killed him by relying on his family background. "Yes, I will not take you in for free. Do you understand?" The black Kylan nodded hurriedly. I understand. That's good. Now I want to subdue all the demonic beasts in the Haotian civilization. As the king of the demonic beasts, you can command them all. You know what to do, right?" Suyu stated his purpose. The black Kylan shook his head and said, "I can only command some of the demonic beasts. The rest are beyond my ability." "Huh?" Suyu frowned. "Why?" As the king of the demonic beasts, he had absolute authority. About half of the demonic beasts have been tamed by a mysterious force. "I can't command them." Suyu's eyes became serious. Someone had beaten him to it, and had taken a fancy to the demonic beasts of the Haotian civilization. "It doesn't matter. First, subdue the demonic beasts that you can summon. As for the rest, I will use force and cooperate with the demonic beasts that you control to subdue them." The black Kylan hesitated. This is not good. The person who can control more than half of the demonic beasts is not someone easy to deal with. Suyu said nothing and struck his palm at the sky again. Rumble. Another scene of heaven and earth shattering took place in the world. The black Kylan's eyelids twitched. He said, "All right, with Master's unparalleled divine strength, you have nothing to fear. However, I'm afraid it will take some time." Suyu looked at his fair palm and laughed self-deprecatingly. "Time is the last thing I lack now." He flipped his palm again, and a small nightmare crossing lotus appeared in his palm. He secretly rejoiced. "Fortunately, I tried my best to repair this nightmare crossing lotus back then, so I don't have any useful people by my side." He activated the miniature crossing evil lotus throne and released many living beings. The sinful lady, Xiao Dai, Lu Zhu, and the others could all become Suyu's right-hand men. After explaining the situation, the living creatures of the Nightmare Crossing Lotus were all excited. This was a preparation for their future home. Moreover, it was a huge investment. If all the demonic beasts were subdued, it was hard to imagine how great of a force they could build. While the Haotian civilization carried out the demonic beast subduing operation that no one knew about, the broken civilization was in a state of turmoil. After a few days, Wen Cheng and the others finally returned to Wenyuan City. However, before Wenyuan City could bring back so many resources with them, they received a visit from the first city master. 10 days later, the first city master came to Wenyuan City with his daughter, Xiaoyan.